Welcome to Day Zero Update for January 4th, 2026. I'm your host, Chris Salogi.
I'm Brandon Perkins.
And I'm Janred Victorio.
And yeah, this is our Game of the Year podcast. We've got a bunch of games to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
10 games from each of us, and the main 10 from the overall site Game of the Year list.
Yeah.
That probably gives us at least 20 games to talk about.
Yeah.
Especially for me, because I think I only have 3 here that are on the main list, so I got plenty of my own to talk about. But yeah, we won't be talking about games we've been playing over the break, because we got plenty of other, and I suspect some of them might be ones we're still playing, so... but we do have a few bits of news, a couple of things that are important or relate to our last episode where we talked about games to look forward to for the next few months. And inevitably, as we do every single time, one of them gets delayed immediately.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll get to that stuff here in a moment. But yeah, let's see. For our first bit of news, there's a big bit of a big story that happened right before Christmas, in that Vince Zampella passed away in a car accident where he seemed to be driving very fast in his vehicle, exited this notorious tunnel where that is a very dangerous thing to do because there's a sharp turn right after it, and ended up not making the turn, crashing. I believe his passenger was ejected from the car but died on the way to the hospital, and he unfortunately was stuck in it, and the car caught fire, and you can guess where that goes.
Yeah.
An awful way to
God
go.
damn, that is an awful way to go. God.
Yeah. Entirely preventable if he just drove normally instead of trying to show off. But yeah, big bit of news for the industry, because he is a guy that has helped guide this industry to where it's at this point. Because
Yeah.
he was, co-founder of Infinity Ward.
Yep. He actually started doing stuff for. I think he was originally developer on the Medal of Honor series back in the day. Which is like he and is one of the people who essentially helped bring first person shooters into the mainstream. Because Medal of Honor, before Call of Duty, Medal of Honor was where it was at.
Yeah.
And it had a massive community of both people playing them for the campaigns and single player. And yeah, like eventually him and who was the other guy? It was Grant Collier and Jason West. They went back in 2002, went and started Infinity Ward, where they basically started the Call of Duty franchise, which is, for better or worse, probably among the like top 3 gaming franchises out there.
Yeah, certainly decided the way that games would be made from Modern Warfare onward.
Yeah.
Because multiplayer changed from just being, like Doom and Quake, where it's just like, you just shoot everybody until somebody wins the match, or you do capture the flag or other stuff like that.
Yeah.
To it being an account thing that you gain levels and bonuses off of that stuff. You're leveling up your gun and your equipment and all that kind of stuff. It kind of changed how multiplayer would be, and that's what all the free-to-play games do.
Yeah.
Multiplayer, is pretty much all that, unless you're trying to buck the trend at this point. And yeah, Call of Duty's been the top-selling console game for almost the last 20 years straight.
But of course, they didn't just stay at Infinity Ward. Him and Jason West eventually jumped ship in 2010, and they went and started Respawn, which ended up breaking. Well, they did a couple different things. They created Titanfall 1 and 2. Unfortunately, neither of those games have really got the kind of commercial success I think they kind of deserved, especially Titanfall 2. That game ended up being amazing. But they also more or less saved EA's ass when they put out a sort of hero shooter called a battle royale hero shooter called Apex Legends, which ended up becoming a massive success pretty much out of the gate right around the time when, hero shooters and battle royales were still kind of a new thing. And, everyone, they had that Fortnite heat. Um, and
Yeah.
basically, we're the only, like, I say that all the time, but it's 100% true. Apex Legends saved EA, basically, because EA was basically in the red before that game premiered, and basically single-handedly dragged them back into the black. And because of that, EA basically did what they probably should have done with Battlefront 2, and they just sort of said, okay, you can do this Star Wars game. Just we'll be hands off. Do what you think is the right thing to do. And so they ended up giving us two of the best Star Wars games in a long time: Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
So
In spite of their performance issues.
yeah,
Um, and then yeah, then they said, "Hey, you've made really good shooters
yeah,
before. Why don't you take over?" I think they promoted him to an exec level and made him
hmm
in charge of the battlefield unit, and sort of try to get that back on uh, the uh, the right track. And Battlefield 6 has done incredibly well this year,
hmm
as Call of Duty is sort of on a down note right now.
yeah. It's been kind of on. It's been walking a tightrope for like the last. I really want to say like almost a decade now because they really just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and they've been doing too many direct sequels following the previous game.
Because they're still trying to capture that modern warfare magic. Um, because
Yeah, and I
like
think
when,
trying to find something that breaks the out of the malaise that the series has. I don't know. And
yeah,
so kind of just like, well, what if we just make another quick sequel to this, and then
hmm
maybe have another team that gets a few more years to work
hmm
on something, and maybe they find the next big thing versus they put out Black Ops 7, and that's a ridiculous amount of those games to have at this point,
hmm
especially when their campaign ends in like a big raid event kind of thing that they had
yeah,
to unlock for everybody to be able to play because you had to play through the campaign and it did not unlock fast enough. And that
yeah,
seemed to be the coolest part of the campaign.
hmm
Otherwise, you end up in a bad place and they're trying to dig their way out of it.
yeah,
So yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of what his impact has been so
yeah, he
far.
definitely he definitely had a huge impact. Obviously, I have a lot of ties to creative director of
hmm
the Battlefield games, and funny enough, like yeah, he's one of the founders of Respawn, right? So he obviously had all that work with Titanfall. He had all that work with Call of Duty, and all of a sudden, he's putting Dice and all of EA's first-person shooters on his back. And I remember 2021, which was when my company got acquired to work with. It just seemed like Vince had a lot of stuff just thrown onto him. And at the same time, it's like you get it because obviously he has the creative mind to work all that. But one thing that people don't talk enough of is being a creative and being an exec at a company like E, especially
hmm
since you have to deal with a lot of the financials and things like that. And he had a pretty messy breakup with Activision, and it's tough to really want to like stay involved with all that kind of stuff, especially when you don't really want to get involved with the money stuff. You'd be proud of them, and yeah, like when I got the news of this, I was uh, in Florida for business, but that day it was over, and I was like getting ready. Um, I saw IGN post about it. He's not even. Yeah, I saw how it happened. It's just tragic, Like we talk about what he's accomplished, how he's to just go out like that. Like I'm not gonna go ahead and talk about how he drove, but that's just an unfortunate way to go, especially right before Christmas. It's not a fun situation. So, I wish him, or I wish his family and everybody that he knows and loves all the best. But yeah, that's just
Yeah, that was The nice thing I saw in the wake of that is it seemed like everybody in the industry had no bad words about him, talking about how he was very personable and willing to step aside at any show that he met them at and talk about, life or business or whatever. I think Kojima even tweeted about talking to him after he left Konami and all that, and kind of got a little tour at Respawn to see their tech and all that, as he was trying to figure out what to do with what they were going to do at the new Kojima productions and all that. And it's like, yeah, seems like that's the bigger loss here is a guy who had the biggest successes in the industry and was still a decent person. Versus the way a lot of people go when they get up to that kind of level.
Yeah.
Especially over such a long period of time, they can become a huge egomaniac and all that. And he didn't seem to get to that point. At least not in his professional life, maybe in his personal life. It seemed like he had lots of expensive cars and like to drive fast and all that.
Yeah.
And then that caught up with him. But yeah, that's unless you guys have anything to add on that.
Not really.
So yeah, there you go for that bit of news. Let's see, we got a new month here. We'll pivot to the 2026 stuff. PlayStation Plus's essential lineup for January, which is going to be on the 6th here on Tuesday. They got an interesting group of games here. First up, Need for Speed Unbound for the PS5, which is a very good open world racing game. Kind of ends up breaking it into two experiences. You have your single player campaign that goes along with a decent story. It's very Fast and Furious and that kind of stuff. But then you get to the multiplayer stuff where you just kind of log into an open world version of the city that has a lot of the sort of challenges and such that you expect out of like the other Need for Speed games and Forza Horizon and all that. So you kind of get what ends up being a pretty good package there. So that's one if you're looking for that kind of stuff. That's one to check out. Especially since it's going to be quite a while before we see a Need for Speed game again. Seems like that's on the break for a while.
Yeah.
Then we get for PS5 and PS4 Disney Epic Mickey Rebrushed. The sort of remaster of the original Epic Mickey that was one of those games that had a lot of potential but did not really live up to that once they had to finish the game.
Yeah, mostly due to the fact that they were making it for the Wii, which ended up kind of biting them in the ass.
Maybe to a degree, but like the style stuff they were going for and a lot of the concept art just did not pan out in the actual game.
Yeah.
But still made an interesting game. And they went with the sequel that went more of a musical direction.
Yeah, and basically killed the series outright.
Maybe show there wasn't that much juice in that franchise.
Yeah.
Especially when it was a Wii U launch title that performed incredibly bad.
Yep.
For hardware that was, on par with the PS3 and Xbox 360 version. So there's that. And then the last one here for PS5 and PS4 is Core Keeper. One of those kind of indie survival crafting games. Bit of Minecraft, bit of Stardew Valley, that kind of stuff where you're kind of going around these underground areas and collecting resources and taking down monsters and all that kind of stuff to build out your territory. Do all that kind of stuff. Seemed neat when I was playing it on Game Pass last year. Maybe I'll jump back into it for this. So yeah, that's your 3 games and some pretty solid stuff here.
Yep.
Anything you're interested in, Brandon?
Definitely the Epic Mickey Rebrushed. I played the original back when it came out, and despite what I said, I actually really enjoyed it, and because it was more than anything, it was very much a love letter to classic Disney, and was loaded with all kinds of references and Easter eggs to not just old Disney, but also like Disney merchandise and like the parks and everything. There was even uh, an Easter egg that was basically Walt Disney's office, like that he had originally in I can't remember if it was either in Disneyland itself or in Walt Disney World, but it was like it was pretty. I'm pretty sure it was Disneyland, but yeah, it was there, and so a lot of the puzzles made references to the stuff that you'd find in the parks. There was even a whole thing about finding hidden Mickeys and all that, and it was just a lot of fun, and also because it was based around using that paintbrush, and it was probably one of the better implementations of the Wiimote in game design that game had. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to playing the rebrushed version. Also, in NFS Unbound looks pretty fun too. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's about it for me.
especially because it's got a little bit of animation style to it.
Hmm.
They have a nice little effect there when you're going into boost mode and taking big jumps. They add a little flair to it that's really nice. But yeah, how about you, Danrip?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just Epic Mickey. Not really for the same reasons. But I did not play a whole lot of it. Like during that time, dedicating myself to any single one of them. I know it's not really like thought highly of, but it's something
Hmm.
that I do want to jump back into. In fact, as far as these PlayStation games goes, it goes a few months back, but I actually started playing a little bit of Bluey, and I'm actually really enjoying that one. So maybe there is some hope for me to go back into.
Yeah, the fun fact about Epic Mickey is that that game got Disney to trade a real human being for the rights to the character Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Yep.
They traded I think Al Michaels,
Hmm.
who was the one of the announcers for Monday Night Football at the time, and they ended up trading him to I think NBC Universal, whatever they were back then. Because they are the ones that ended up with the rights to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit at some
Hmm.
point, and so yeah, they ended up trading those two for each other, and yeah, I believe they've even done some Oswald the Lucky Rabbit animated uh, specials or whatever since then. So they've gotten some play out of that. But yeah, a human being was traded for a cartoon character at one point.
Yep.
It also really worked out and made a whole lot of sense because during that time Disney didn't or ABC didn't have the license to Monday Night Football anymore. So moving.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that for your news, and the last one is the one game that's the one major game that got delayed out of our release preview window. 007 First Light, which was supposed to be out March 27th, got delayed
Hmm.
to May 27th to
So
give
like two
themselves,
months.
yeah, give them a little extra time to keep working on it. As they say, the game is progressing well and is fully playable from beginning to end. These additional 2 months will allow us to further polish and refine the experience.
Hmm.
Ensuring we deliver the strongest possible version at launch. We're confident this sets up 007 First Light up for long-term success, and we sincerely appreciate the patience and continued support we've received ever since we revealed the game. So yeah, that'll be a little bit later. Though I jumped into Hitman World of Assassination and saw the little promotion thing there for 007, and it still said March, so they have not updated of this announcement. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, yep, there's the game that's got delayed out of the ones we were talking about for the next couple months here. So yeah, that's the prophecy has been paid off once again.
Yeah, it's not a bad one either. Although to be honest, having that original date would have been nice, like to me. But yeah, now all of a sudden moving to May 27th puts them 2 days before Lego Batman. I'm not sure a lot of have to choose one or the other, but those are two stealth games, so see how that.
Yeah, they obviously saw Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection get announced for the same day. We're like, we gotta move. This is too powerful for us. But yeah, that's the news for the week. We'll talk about other things next week. But yeah, we'll get to the game of the year stuff, and the way that we're going to talk about this is we'll talk about our number tens, If you have your game is on the main list, we've already bolded these so we know which ones those are.
Mm-hmm.
You can just say that it's on the list. We'll talk about it when we get to the overall list. So we'll just be talking about a personal list right now
Mm-hmm.
for the games that we have enjoyed the most this year, and then we'll get to the overall list for what's remaining. So, and I'll kick it off here. My number 10 is Ghost of Yote.
Mm-hmm.
Barely made the list, but I got a decent bit of time, just not enough to move it up any higher into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one made our list at number 7 for overall. So we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. How about you, Brandon?
My number 10 was Avowed. And Avowed was a game that was really divisive when it came out because it was the first Pillars of Eternity like universe game that 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 was like a first person. It was based first person, based around Obsidian's sort of approach to games like like Fallout New Vegas or their Outer Worlds series. Um, and I liked it a lot. I absolutely understand why some people didn't, partly due to the fact that if you went into this game wanting something like on the sort of expansiveness as like New Vegas was, you're not going to get that. It's just the Pillars of Eternity universe, as fun as it is, just doesn't have that kind of detail to it. Um, that being said, however, a big fun part about this game was like you were given all of these options to go about these various missions that you were given. Um, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. I understand why people who didn't like it would not like it. It was very divisive. And yeah, it ended up being my number 10.
Yeah, I played a bit of that. It was probably the only Microsoft game I put any real time into.
Yeah.
Um, but it had, very fun combat. It was fun to kind of try different weapons because they tend to play a bit differently.
Hmm.
Things like your melee weapons or your spell book, even guns and that kind of
Yep.
stuff that all played pretty differently. And you got to, I think, at least have a second set of uh, loadout for your stuff so you can
Hmm.
kind of swap around a bit
Oh yeah.
easily. That made it pretty nice to do.
Hmm.
Um, and I really liked the world because it was a fairly big map, but not super huge. So you can
Yeah.
kind of get around pretty quickly if you
Hmm.
needed to. And they played around with a lot of the the notes and such you would get that would be like, oh, there's treasure here or this kind of thing, or give you like a map of sorts that kind of showed off what's a general area where you might find something at. And it's not a game that has like random loot, or I don't think there's really any duplicate kind of loot you could get to it. So you kind of just had the one thing and you really didn't have to do a ton of inventory management really.
Hmm.
Um, you maybe just wanted to put some stuff away just to clear things out, but otherwise, like when you get to your camp, you can kind of see like what you can upgrade, and maybe that influences you changing styles and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the story also was pretty good. I feel like it was
Hmm.
taking a lot of things you liked out of the Outer Worlds, but making
Hmm.
it uh, a better experience.
Yeah.
So I think in the Outer Worlds being more sci-fi and gun focused, you could have ended up with tons of ammo and just really took away a lot of uh, the challenge out of it.
Yeah.
Versus this game where they kind of keep the challenge pretty well, as long as you're not
Hmm.
just doing a ton of grinding to
Yeah.
it. And also, it was really nice getting around the world because it had a lot of parkour kind of stuff you could do
Hmm.
as you wanted to climb up on buildings and walls and such to try to find a lot of extra chests and such that you could open up, and they often had stuff there. So
Hmm.
that kind of made that a pretty fun world to explore with all that. So yeah, that's one people should check out.
Mm.
Um, at least if you're not boycotting Microsoft stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just continue on like everybody else is doing, the
Yeah.
way that their sales are doing these days.
Mm.
But yeah, that's your number 10. So how about you, Dan?
Yeah, I had a really tough time with number 10. Actually, like the entire second half of my list was tough for me. But for number 10, it was really between what I chose, Ghost of Yotei. But the reason why it's not there is I didn't finish it. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, South of Midnight, Metroid Prime 4, which was probably the closest one. But what I ended up choosing was Octopath Traveler 0.
Mm.
Those of you that have been here for a while, the original Octopath Traveler was my game of the year back when that one came out. I never played the second one, and Octopath Traveler 0 really surprised me. It surprised me primarily due to the fact that since it was a mobile game before, I didn't think it would be all that great. But it was a lot of the mobile, it was a lot of the stuff from the mobile game that really impressed me the most. The main thing with Octopath Traveler 0 is that unlike any of the standard, you're not, and at the same time you also have some player agency. So there are some decisions you make that'll alter the course of the game. It's not anything like a dispatch or like a telltale game or anything like that, but at the same time like having that agent, and you also have the town or city keep up as you play through the game, so you're worried about the main plot, you're worried about and all of that is like pretty new for Octopath Traveler. And if you enjoyed the mobile game, great. And what I really like the most about this game is that the main story has three antagonists, and these are three of the most effed up people I have ever met in a video game. And killing every single one of these people was extremely satisfying. And yeah, it was just totally great doing that. One of them is a playwright who pretty much gets his inspiration from understanding things from a personal perspective. Like, for example, he can't write a murderer unless he murders someone himself. Or he can't really understand pain unless he inflicts pain, like a child or an old person. He does it all. Like, he is absolutely unhinged. There's another antagonist loves money to the point where, like, it pretty much gets her off. And it's funny because this game is primarily in HD 2D. There's nothing 3D about it. And like there's one scene where she is in bed with three man whores, and I'm like, okay, this is absolutely hilarious seeing this in the game because this doesn't look mature at all. But the themes in here are very much mature. Like I would not recommend like a child playing this. Maybe someone who gets to like age 10, but like someone who's in second grade, I probably wouldn't recommend this game to. But yeah, like aside from that, it's typical Octopath Traveler action. The main thing that makes it different is the fact that you can use 8 characters at a time, and all you have to do is make them switch rows. And there are no super classes where they can use more than 4 weapons. So you still have to rely on that strategy where if you don't know what the weakness is, and all that was really fun. And one of the reasons why like I scored it the way it did was because after you finish the main story, there's a whole lot more, and it's good, but it just isn't as good as like the original stuff. And when I was doing more research on it, all of the additional content was DLC or expansions, and yeah, it's tough to expect that stuff to be as good as what you played, but at the same time, it was still solid. All in all, if you were to complete this whole game the whole way through, it's 100 hours. That said, playing 35 hours of this game is totally fine, and that's why I'm putting it here. Like I just loved the entire thing, even though it didn't end the way I wanted it to. But even if you only played it for a little bit, there's a lot of fun to be had, and that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all our 10s here. We'll get to our number 9s, and mine is Hollow Knight Silksong, which is another game that I put a lot of time into, but from what I've heard, that's a game you can easily put 50, 60 hours into and still not beat it. If I didn't hear people mention it on podcasts, I would not know that there's, multiple acts of that game. But yeah, that's on our main list at number 6, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, Brandon, how about you? Your number 9?
My number 9 was the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. And there are a couple of reasons for this. The first was the documentary stuff. This game is loaded with, it's got documentaries on like how the games were made, their development cycles, the all the like collection of like concept art and memorabilia and comic books and stuff like that all in there. So the game is just stuffed with just about everything you ever want to know about the OG Mortal Kombat games. But the second reason was that as I was playing through all of those games, it reminded me why it is that this particular franchise managed to succeed where all of its imitators failed miserably. Because for people who are, me and Chris and Dan Reb's age, growing up in the 90s, know that a good chunk of the arcade scene was made up of games that were trying to rip off Mortal Kombat or at least steal Mortal Kombat's thunder. And none of them ever managed to actually get anywhere close to Mortal Kombat's success. And the reason is because Mortal Kombat was a lot more than just the spectacle of it. It was certainly a spectacle. The Mortal Kombat games were some of the most fun games to watch people play in the arcades, especially when they were brand new and you really had no idea what to expect. When Mortal Kombat 3 came out years ago, I remember constantly going to the arcades, never getting a chance to play it because it was always crowded. Um, in fact, it was one of those games where the arcade machines would usually have like an additional screen hooked up to it up top, just so people could actually watch people play it in the back. And the reason, more than anything else, that the Mortal Kombat game succeeded where all the other ones failed is because it wasn't just the gore. The actual gameplay was still very solid and was actually like fun and felt good to play. Now, that's not to say all of them were. The first Mortal Kombat, anybody who's ever played the original Mortal Kombat compared to Mortal Kombat 2 or Mortal Kombat 3 or any of the other Mortal Kombat games that came after can tell you is the first Mortal Kombat is very floaty. Um, it doesn't play nearly as well as like the sequel did. Mortal Kombat 2 essentially took what the first Mortal Kombat did and pretty much perfected it. There's a reason why that game was such a huge coin getter in the arcades because it not only was it fun to watch people play, it was also genuinely fun to play. And playing all those games, it reminded me of all of the copycats that came out around that same time. A lot of people probably remember Time Killers. They probably remember Bloodstorm. They might remember that Jackie Chan fighting game that came out. But there were also, games like Kasumi Ninja, Expect No Mercy, Way of the Warrior. All of these games that tried very hard to steal Mortal Kombat's thunder and just couldn't do it because they just weren't as well designed as the Mortal Kombat games were. Um, yeah, that's why it's my number 10. Obviously, it does have like a couple of oddballs in the collection. Mostly the Mortal Kombat Advance version, which is obviously a abomination to look at, and of course the spin-offs that just didn't really work, like Special Forces and Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. But yeah, that's the game. That's was my number 9. So Dan Reb, what was your number 9?
Yeah, my number 9 was Dispatch, and that was on our final list. So I'll talk about.
All right. We'll go to our number 8s. This one I can actually talk about. My number 8 is Sectori. Sektory or Tori. This is an indie dual stick shooter from a guy that used to work at Housemarque
Mhm.
throughout much of their development of the Super Stardust HD up through I think Resogun,
Mhm.
and he has taken a lot of um, that part of his career and built a dual stick shooter here that is incredibly uh, well designed, full of depth. Um, People liken it to Geometry Wars, and it has some of that as well. But I think it also has more that it pulls from some of the Housemarque stuff because it has a
Mhm.
lot more going on in terms of mechanics. Because Geometry Wars, you're just shooting the entire time. Occasionally, you kill enough enemies, and you get a more powerful gun. Um, you also have a bomb, but they do
Mhm.
not have anything like that here. It is a dual stick shooter where you're kind of thrown into the ocean in a bit with
Mhm.
the tutorial because it just shows you like some of the basic controls, and it's like, all right, that's enough for you to learn. Go ahead to play it and figure out the rest. And there's a lot of stuff going on because it's visually a very busy game. So much
Mhm.
so when I was first playing it, I was very much like focusing on shooting, and then I realized like, oh, there's these letters in the corner. What's this? And run into this thing that's essentially runs through the different letters of that word. I think the difficulty I play on has it be Mirage,
Mhm.
and sort of Tony Hawk style. You want to get the full word in there. But if you mess it up, it's no harm, no foul. Because I think um, in sort of like a Geometry Wars 2 kind of fashion, you have these little things you're collecting that enemies drop when you kill them. That it fills up a meter that is really easy to miss unless you're paying attention to it. That drops these tokens, but it also drops the letter thing every so often.
Mhm.
So you end up um, uh, getting opportunities for that. But once you fill it up, it causes essentially like a rainbow meltdown for the stage, so
Mhm.
that you get to kill a bunch of enemies, make a bunch of points, as like you get some rainbow flashing colors going on around the place, and it's a really interesting reward for following through with that mechanic.
Mhm.
There's also other stuff that it does really well with the strike move, which is sort of this like dash move that you have
Mhm.
that can get you out of binds. You can dash at an enemy and you get a little explosion area around it to take out some enemies, but the thing that is really intended for is the strike combo system, which essentially is when you drop uh collect enough of the giblets or whatever they call them, that drops tokens, and from there you
Mhm.
can take that and strike at the token, and you'll get your strike meter instantly filled again, so you can keep doing it, and
Mhm.
that starts kicking off a multiplier of your scores. And so I've seen when I'm doing this well, and I beat the first boss, I have a good bit more points than I had before. And so it's also such a fun mechanic that it refills that I've continually done it and just forgot to use the tokens I'm getting to upgrade anything. Which
Mhm.
it's not a thing you want to do because I believe if you do that, you uh, cycle back around and it just drops another token as a
Yeah.
bonus, which is useless, which is less useful than using that to upgrade, different parts of your attack stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, that mechanic is pretty interesting. Sort of like an R type game where you have the or Gradius. I forget which shooters do it. I think Gradius has the words on the bottom of the screen that are like these different types of weapons you can upgrade to. It's sort of similar to that. You're getting these tokens, and it's moving up from the bottom one, which upgrades your speed, all the way to the top, which upgrades your your shooter, your main shooter, your
Mhm.
guns for your ship, and uh, different parts of that has you can upgrade your strike, you can upgrade you have missiles shooting that's are heat seeking will go to other enemies around. And sort of you want to do your upgrades to make your ship better, more powerful, more dangerous, and more able
Mm-hmm.
to just build up this uh, amount of giblets that you're collecting to drop more tokens and kind of keep the strike combo going. Maxes out at 5, but if you can keep it
Mm-hmm.
going for a while, you're kind of really getting a bunch of uh, score coming in to keep
Mm.
that potential for getting your high score, getting higher on the leaderboards, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and that's just the main campaign. There's also more to it than that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll let people play it and kind of learn all that kind of stuff. Um, because it has like Geometry Wars 2 and 3. It has a bunch of extra side modes that unlock as soon as you beat the first boss in the campaign. And those
Mm.
have a lot of similar ideas of like a pacifist mode and a more pure shooting mode,
Mm.
and all these other types of things. One's like a boss rush as you run through the bosses. So if you are having trouble with bosses, that can get you a good bit of practice with that stuff. So yeah, it ended up being one of the most surprising games of the year because this came out I think in November and just
Mm.
ended up being sort of one of the most interesting dual stick shooters I've seen in quite a long time. And yeah, ended up being enough to get it on my list. So yeah, that is my number 8. So Brandon, what is your number 8?
My number 8 was Off, which this is technically a remake, but more or less the first official like commercial release of a kind of offbeat French RPG that came out well over a decade ago. It's more or less considered to be the game that sort of kick-started the whole sort of modern offbeat RPG scene that exists now. Games like because of this, games like Undertale and Omori, Fear and Hunger, all those games were heavily inspired by using by this game first coming out, and it's really hard to sort of describe because it's not a particularly deep game, but it is an incredibly strange one. One that gets stranger and stranger the further you go into it. Um, it's essentially you are playing a character who's just called the Batsman, and he's a dude in an old timey baseball uniform carrying around a baseball bat. And he's basically been given the job to cleanse the world of spirits. But as the game goes on, you start to realize that there's something a little off about this guy and the world that you live in. Because the actual universe itself that this game takes place in is exceedingly strange. Um, it's filled with these continuously nervous sort of office drone type guys who are involved in like all these different factories and farms and mines, um, and they're producing stuff like sugar and meat and plastic, but it's not done like the way we typically like the way that we believe that you actually get sugar, meat, and plastic. It's made through like all of these really bizarre ways, and the game's also filled with all of these like really these puzzles that can be particularly complicated, like surprisingly complicated, especially because a bunch of them are based around like this 3x3 grid that um, is supposed to represent like numbers 1 through 9, and there's like a bunch of numerical sequences you have to do, and it's so weird and yet so addictive at the same time. What's especially good about this version is because it's essentially a remake. They went back and like redid a bunch of the graphics. They redid the music, and managed to get individuals like Toby Fox involved in composing a lot of the music. They updated a lot of the sound effects so that it sounds clearer to hear. And they also added like some new boss characters as well to create like a new secret ending that you can get if you manage to fight all of and defeat all of them. Um, it's just it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my time with Off, but I also again, it's one of those games that is just really offbeat. And if you like Undertale, if you like Amori, you'll probably enjoy Off. It's not quite as in depth as those games are, but it definitely has like the spirit and the atmosphere of them. So, Dana Red, what about you?
Yeah, my number 8 was Pipistrello, and not a whole lot of people know about this one, but I think I first came across it during GDC at the Mix, which is what it kind of. And yeah, when I played the demo, I was there for a good 45 minutes, and there was even a good amount of time. Yeah, I did not expect this one to be as nice as it was. Just to put it to perspective, the marketing calls it a Yo-Yo-Vania, so Metroidvania vibes. It's really not that at all. It's really like a Game Boy Zelda game. And, for anybody that's played, like, yeah, they definitely do have that sort of old school Link to the Past NES kind of feel. But it also has, like, a lot of the stuff that made the games after Ocarina of Time nice. And what's cool about this one is it does have that 90s, late 80s sort of unfair challenge. But, if you wanted to, you can just go ahead and go into the accessibility settings and make yourself a little bit better that way. But at the same time, there are like also opportunities for you to get these certain perks or hearts and things like that. And yeah, so your main weapon is a yo-yo, and that yo-yo is also going to be the main way you solve puzzles as well. So, for example, you go in front of a block that you hit at a diagonal. That'll go ahead and have your yo-yo shift into a right angle. I found all of that to be nice, intuitive, and really creative. And as you continue to play through the game, you'll unlock all sorts of different power-ups and abilities, like the ability to jump, the ability to do elements, and yeah, all of these typical things that really make it special. That was a game that came out like right before the summer, and I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
Yeah. We'll get to our sevens. For me, it is Player Obscure Expedition 33. Sort of like some of these other ones are games I enjoyed a lot that I did not get a ton of time into. So we'll talk a bit more about this since it's on our main list. So, Brandon, what about your number 7?
Yeah, my number 7 was Trails in the Sky first chapter, and pretty much everything from here on out is stuff that's on our top 10 list. So we'll talk more about it when we get there. But Dan Red, what about you?
Anyway, that being said, my number 7 is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I was actually surprised that this one did not make our final list, and I'm gonna go ahead and blame Pat and Lee for that because I'm pretty sure if they participated, we would have had this on the list easily. But yeah, Shinobi Art of Vengeance was the game that I first got my hands on at SGF. And, a lot like Pipistrello, as soon as I got my hands on it, I knew that I had to, play it and review it. First of all, it was actually supposed to be Filippo reviewing this one. Unfortunately, like, it just didn't work out with the way his eyesight works. And luckily, we had an extra code for me to play. And yeah, I was more than happy to because I was already playing it. If you've played a Shinobi game before, there might be a buyer beware here because it doesn't really play exactly like the old Shinobi games. And when I say that, if you've played the old Shinobi games on the Genesis, they were really projectile based. Most of your offense is going to be, ninja stars, shuriken, kunai, that sort of stuff. That gameplay does still exist in Shinobi, but not all that much. It's really a lot of melee strikes. You have honestly, it played a lot like a more intuitive Katana Zero, for those of you that remember that. And what really makes this one special was that it really definitely felt like a 90s game mixed with some, modern play action. And yeah, I totally enjoyed it. Eventually, it gets to the point where it does get a little bit Sega hard. Like a lot of things do feel cheap, but as you start to learn about all the things that protagonist has, is his name is escaped. No, Joe Musashi has. Then you'll really just have a ball with it. He has all these spells and all these ninjutsu that he can use to get by things, and yeah, it's just a whole lot of fun. And there's also a lot of replay value if you go back and try to find things that weren't there before, because there's a little bit of a Metroidvania aspect to it. And I know a lot of people have a hate it or love it kind of attitude when it comes down to it, but it's really more of a mini Metroidvania because um, as you replay levels, you'll see things in the environment that are obviously things that you can go ahead and interact with. And when you actually do that, it's pretty small. There's not much to discover. You're really just there to find some items that you can use to platinum. And really enjoyed it. I wish it was higher, but yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's our number sevens, number sevens. My number six. My number six is Squeakross Home Squeak Home. Much like last year, where I found a Picross game that really struck a chord with me. This is another one that is probably the best of the non-Jupiter Picross games that I've played, because it is a game that mixes Picross with Animal Crossing. As you can probably guess from the title, it involves mice. You essentially make a mouse at the beginning of the game that moves into a house. Hence, Home Squeak Home, as provided by some charity that is made up for the game that provides homes for mice. From there, as you're completing puzzles, you are getting the furniture or clothing items that you are doing those puzzles for to put on your mouse or put in the home. And as you complete certain amounts of puzzles, then you open up more rooms in the house. It is 5 rooms total. Sort of like a classic Animal Crossing fashion where you'd have sort of this plus-shaped map of rooms from the main room kind of thing. And that makes for some really interesting ways you can design stuff, because it tends to give you like themes of items. So obviously at some point it gives you a bunch of cheese themed furniture, and so that obviously goes all in one room because that is the cheese room for all of that. You get a bunch of cool clothing items, and in case you wonder if the devs are good people, there's a lot of rainbow themed items there, so some good support there for that stuff. And as you complete more puzzles, you also get emails, some of which are fake spam. Others are pictures of mice that devs have taken pictures of their own mice and gerbils and hamsters and whatnot. And you just get those every once in a while for some nice, cute pictures of some of those creatures. And yeah, it's a really pleasant one of these games. And the thing that they do that I think is better than what Jupiter does is their puzzles tend to be, if it's say a dresser that you're doing, you would just be doing it straight on for the puzzle. For Jupiter, here they tend to put it at an angle so that it's not just a thing that is easy to figure out how it's going to look, and so it makes the puzzle more interesting. In the challenge version, which lets you place as many of those of many versions of that item as you want in your house, which I did in the demo, where I unlocked the first couple items, and I got the ability to lay down as many chairs as I could, and that led to me just being like, all right, I'll put chairs in every single square of this house, this room I have unlocked, which I ended up bringing over when I started the game, and that was a bad idea, because at that point they did not have the ability to just clear out everything in a room, so I literally had to go and click on every single chair and delete it to get back to a sensible building, versus the silly one I left it in. And And so yeah, it's a really well done one of these. It does not have any time pressure or anything. You don't see the timer unless you want to turn it on. It has great accessibility options. Make it as hard or as easy as you want. It doesn't judge you for using hints or anything. Where like in Picross games, I have to essentially, if I want to get any sort of hint, if I get really stuck, I have to uh, save out of it, go back in, take a hint for whatever I'm trying to do, quit out without saving, and then go back into the the version of that puzzle I did not do any hints, and then continue on. Because otherwise, you get no star on it for using no hints, and it's like I don't want to play through some of these over and over again, especially when there's some of the harder ones that take 20, 30 or minutes or an hour. Whereas here, they let you kind of make it as easy, and it's not judgmental, doesn't star puzzles for the simple fact that you got a brain fart at the random time you decided to try to play the game and had to start, don't want to start over on it. So, yeah, it's just one of the best of these that I've played in a long time, and yeah, that is Squeak Cross Home Squeak Home. I think it's only on Switch and PC, so definitely recommend if you have either of those. So that's my number 6. So how about you, Brandon?
My number 6 was Blueprints, which you start doing our the top 10 lists. But suffice to say, really liked that game, and I'll explain more when we get to it. Danreb, what about you?
My number 6 was the 100 line Last Defense Academy, which barely got to our top 10. And both
Yeah,
me and Brandon are here, so we'll talk about that later.
yeah.
All right, so now our number 5s. And mine is Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. This is level 5, kind of getting back to their peak of development, because I think they were really good on the PS2. Then they kind of just made some stuff. They mainly focused on, I think, the Professor Layton stuff. And also on the 3DS made Fantasy Life. That was a really good kind of RPG that's played off on MMO sort of tropes of having these different jobs, essentially. That would range from combat stuff to crafting jobs. To those that gather, your miner, your woodsman kind of stuff, and you're kind of doing the story stuff that's it's perfectly serviceable. It's not anything you're playing for. You're more playing this as like a checklist game, and that ended up being my most played 3DS game. I think with like 200 hours or so on that. I just would just go through each of the jobs, try to do as much of the challenges that they have, and they would sort of work my way through the campaign, and then they had a paid DLC chapter that took place on like the God's Island that you had like new stuff to do, and it was like, all right, that's even better. Then that was like the last we ever saw of it. And then they announced they were working on a new one, and then like in recent level 5 fashion, they got perpetually delayed every year to the following year, and eventually it finally came out this year. And it's just been a really good game to play when I need a game that just does not expect too much of me. It's very much an RPG still. You pick you design your character that kind of gets shipwrecked off of these flying ships, and then you kind of go through this weird storyline that takes you through 3 different timelines. There's time stuff, as you can guess from the title. And as you're popping through these different timelines, they have different things going on. You have the current time. You essentially have like a town you're building, sort of like a dark cloud kind of thing, without having to put the buildings together to make a house. You're just building out the houses for these people, which end up being your party that you can take around in these different areas. That makes for some really fun ways they can join you on different things. So if you're go crafting, they can help you. They'll essentially boost your craft rating for those different disciplines. so you can make higher tier stuff, which is nice. Same for the combat ones and the ones that are for gathering. They can boost that stuff pretty well for you. And yeah, it's just been a really good game. Like the original, like its main negative is that it's hard to switch between jobs, and sort of manage what all you need for each job for the different challenges. It gives you a list of, for the combat ones, it's like kill this enemy or these different enemies, X amount of them. It'll tell you where they're at, and you kind of are able to track them. And at least when you do that, if you go into the area, it'll tell you like, oh, these are over here. You can just run over and go and kill them and do that. But then you're like, okay, wait, there's other jobs that have these other things, and like switching between them, you can only do one at a time. Sometimes it just, when you finish enough stuff, it defaults to the story quest. So the nice thing is that the story the story quests kind of just take you through everything. I'm at the point where I'm about to unlock another job, the farming stuff, which will be nice. But it's kind of where the story stuff, you can kind of just burn through that and then do all the grinding for upgrading all your jobs and all that afterwards. So it kind of makes that like a way you can mainline, technically beat the game, but it still has sort of an open-ended nature to it. And they just added new updates in the last week or so that adds this new thing you can do. Essentially like a roguelike mode. That is a neat little thing. You essentially start without any of your job stuff, and you go around and defeat enemies and occasionally have equipments and armor and such drop that are you're trying to equip sort of the best build to beat the boss at the end. And from there you use all the stuff you got to get points that you can buy things to take it back into the real world. The gimmick is that you're in a dream world for this, so you're kind of trading the loot that you find in the turn into real things. And it's like a nice little side thing that I ran into today. I was like, okay, this is also a nice addition. It was free and all that, so they've been nicely doing some free stuff for that, and that's on pretty much everything, I believe. So definitely recommend checking it out. It has cross-platform saves, so you can, if you have it on multiple platforms, you can move between them pretty easily. And all that. You can play multiplayer if you want to play with some friends. But yeah, solo, it's very fun as well. It's just a nice game to grind and just enjoy your time while I got, something on Netflix or want to occupy myself. So yeah, that's a game has really been a lot of fun, and I'm still got more stuff to do and gonna keep playing it. So that's my number 5. So Brandon, what's your number 5?
My number 5 was Split Fiction, which is funny because I am a loner by nature, I don't really play co-op games, but I did watch plenty of people actually play it. And if there is one thing, and I did watch plenty of people play it. I'll explain more when we get to it on the top 10 list. But yeah, so Arab, what about you?
My number 5 was the often talked about Claire Obscure Expedition 33, which you guys know we'll be talking about later.
Oh, yeah.
All right, on to our number 4s. Mine is Ball Pit. Probably a game I did not expect to happen or be into at all. It's the newest game from Kenny's son, who made a previous game I think was called Mr. Sun's Hatbox, which was a really interesting indie game that is kind of like what if you made a solo version of what extraction shooters are, where you're essentially have this criminal empire of people trying to go into these levels to steal stuff, and if they die, they die, and you leave the stuff behind, you lose it, all that kind of stuff. But this game is a bit of a mix of Arkanoid and a little bit of Vampire Survivors to it. And in the outside of the main levels you're playing, you are kind of doing a bit of a city builder to it, and this is a game that I've been playing pretty much every week since I got it. I beat the game at like 20 hours in. Now I'm at like 35 hours, and I'm still finding more things to do, more things to
Mm.
upgrade. It has a lot of achievements that are based on beating each of the stages with at least 10 of the characters, and achievements for beating every stage with each character. So there's still a lot of stuff going on with that. But your first few characters that you unlock are very uh, predictable what their abilities are and all that. But once you start getting like halfway through of I think it's 12 characters. When you start getting like 5 or 6 characters in, it starts really throwing in some interesting characters I would not have expected to be in this kind of game. The first ones you get like a very basic knight who, you know, just throws these balls around in the stage. They hit enemies that are coming down towards you. Um, in fact, he has no special abilities to him, so he's very much the most basic character. And your second one is just a guy who um, shoots out these balls in a specific direction, but also they kind of have a little variance to them. I think what they call like a loose aim
Mm-hmm.
in the rest of the game. Um, and from there, you get like two characters that shoot balls in different directions.
Mm.
They shoot in the opposite directions, so they kind of mirror. So if you're the way I tend to play this, I pull the cursor for where you're aiming your balls to the lowest possible angle, so that they kind of have the most time to bounce and get hit enemies at uh, unusual angles versus doing it like head on or anything like that. There's sometimes situations like that where you want to. If they get close to you at the bottom of the screen, they will essentially jump at you and attack you and lower your
Mm.
health. And that's obviously not something you want to do. But then you get to a character that, yeah, it's sort of like a Vampire Survivors fashion. They drop XP orbs that you pick up. As you level, you pick up more the main type of active balls or passive balls that it gives you. Sort of Vampire Survivor fashion, you have active weapons and passive trinkets, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if you max out their levels, which goes to 3, and you have 2 that are going to combo together, they can max out and combo into a new weapon. It usually combines things that the 2 base ones did. So
Mm.
it also frees up inventory space for you. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a really necessary thing to be as powerful as possible for the final boss.
Mm.
And it kind of the way the stages work. You work through 3 bosses for that stuff, so you get little tests the way through, and then 2/3 of the way through, and then for that, and it's really wants you to be constantly building up your power in that way. And so the one of the characters you get like 5 or 6 in essentially makes the upgrade decisions on its own. So you're
Mm-hmm.
just doing all the action, and it's like, all right, I'm picking this. You're like, oh, okay, I would not have picked that, but okay. And that can be useful because it lets you see like other combos that work. Um, Much like Vampire Survivors doesn't tell you all the combos ahead of
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
Luckily, on the internet, people have already built out guides for that stuff, so you can see like what you're missing. Um, in the sort of the codex screen, it'll tell you that there's other evolutions uh for that particular ball type. So you
Mm-hmm.
know that there's other things going on there, but it doesn't tell you ahead of time what to look for. But luckily, most of them have at least a couple evolutions to them. But yeah, you get that character that makes the decisions on their own, and then it starts getting weirder from there. There's one that's turn based, and essentially
Mm-hmm.
uh, every few seconds after you pick an angle to shoot the balls at, and watch how it's happens, and they return to you, and then it's advances time a few seconds, and then you do it again. You kind of keep going like this, and you're like, how the hell does this work? And then you do a run with it, and you're like, this actually works really well for it, because it's a more strategic way, because you're not just shooting these balls constantly. To be specific, which my style of using the lowest angle works pretty well for that, so that's really nice. And then you get to one that is literally an Arkanoid character who has a shield that sends the balls back, which is a really nice thing. And the bonus on that is the XP orbs and whatnot are all sent to you immediately once they drop, which is a bonus, but also can be bad because the specific drop that lets you do evolutions, you may not want to collect it right away because you might be trying to get enough for another level up to upgrade the thing that you need upgraded to get an evolution. That's like the downside of that. But you keep working around and you get characters that throw the ball in the air so it does not travel the way that you expect. Your cursor is essentially where it's like throwing the ball into the air and it lands and then moves from there, which is really interesting. There's one that the balls drop from the top of the screen, or like if gravity was shifted in reverse. There's one that is sort of like that, but the balls bounce, sort of like it did not work the way that it normally does. So you kind of have this fun element of you got this field of enemies, and you got these balls bouncing, and they're just taking out a bunch of enemies pretty easily. And you eventually get to a point where you have a character that both controls and makes all the upgrade decisions on their own. So it's essentially playing it for you. And you're just like, all right, I just sit here and I let this thing do what it's doing. And it usually wins. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not particularly amazing, but it does a pretty good job. Even if you fail a run, it's not a huge loss. You're gaining currency and some materials and such to take back to your town building stuff. Which initially the town building is not great when you're just starting. It very much seems like it's going to be a chore to do with any of that. But once you kind of get some characters unlocked and some of the building stuff unlocked, you've kind of figure out you want to set up like tunnels and whatnot to make it easier, because once you upgrade them, they have to be hit with to harvest. You're essentially shooting all your characters as balls around the city you've built, and to finish the upgrade, they have to be hit. The buildings have to be hit a certain amount of times to activate it, and so you kind of end up with a weird old situation where you want to upgrade this stuff and maybe don't have the right angles for that stuff, so you can have to move stuff around, and that stuff could be better in this game. Because at a certain point, when you've unlocked all the characters, the buildings that does that that are their essentially their home space, sometimes have benefits to their own. Like one, I believe, boosts the XP earned on all the other characters you can situate around it. So I've had to like sit and move them all around that in the range that it has. Because I want the most, XP, and it's like, oh, I've upgraded many of my buildings as much as they can be, so I have to like shift them all to this corner of the space. I can buy more space if I need to, which I probably should at this point, but I'm being stubborn about it and just upgrading some things. And where I'm at now in sort of the post game is I have buildings that upgrade stats for your characters, and they're just indefinitely upgradable. Trying to upgrade all the rest of the buildings before I do that, because I still have some stat stuff that needs upgraded. But otherwise, yeah, it's a game that has a lot of this fun stuff, and the character stuff kind of gets really wild once you unlock the ability to use two characters at once. Because then the combos of those special abilities that they have can make for some really wild stuff. Or you can combine the two guys that make all the decisions for you, and you just, sit for 10, 15 minutes, whatever. It has speeds for this, so you can go as slow as possible, which is what you want to do early on, but when you have good builds going, you can turn it up and get through a little faster. Because you know you're just going to destroy it, get to the final boss, and eventually beat that. Because it's not a game that's really is hard after like 5 hours of playing it. So once you kind of get a lot of your stats upgraded, your characters are going to generally survive, and you're just trying to uh, beat the stages with enough characters to unlock the next one, and kind of deal with that, and just keep going. It's not a super challenging game in any way, at least after you start unlocking some stuff. But yeah, that's a game that I really recommend for people like roguelites and games that are very weird and uh, do a lot of things that subvert what you're expecting. And that's it's another developer published game. So yeah, it's getting, like I've said, 3 big updates this year. So I'm excited for that to continue to give me reasons to keep playing it. So yeah, that is Ball Pit, one of the best indie. Brandon, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Dispatch, which is once again one of the games we're going to be having at the end, near the end. We'll be explaining. Suffice to say that this was a game that basically I think is a hit of 2025, mostly because it kind of just showed up. It had a little bit of promotion, but it didn't really get like a ton, and when it premiered, it just sort of slowly kind of spread by word of mouth, but we'll get into that more. So, Darren, what about you?
Yeah, my number 4 was Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a while just because I'm a huge Dragon. It caught me by surprise. I'll tell you that. Like, yeah, I'm a JRPG sicko, and I'm never gonna not like. But the reason why this one caught me by surprise was just because of its critical response. Last year we had Dragon Quest 3, of course, and 1 and 2, as far as like, looking back at history fondly, 1 and 2 aren't looked at as all that great. And that's just because, there's not much you can do to make those games like playable today aside from just what they did with HD 2D remake. But they just went above and beyond what anybody could have expected, even from Square, when they've pretty much like but yeah, so those of you who are unfamiliar, the reason why 1 and 2 came after 3 was because in the old Erdrick trilogy, this was the actual way it goes as far as the timeline. Just, it's spoiling 3, but at the end of the day, like, the hero saves the world. He becomes the one known as Erdrick, and then his offspring's offspring eventually gives birth to the hero found in part 1. And here's what makes Dragon Quest 1 special. Obviously, like, I mean, I don't want to say obviously, but this was technically the first JRPG. JRPGs back then were essentially, or RPGs back then were essentially just books, like basically what you see in Dungeons and Dragons, and these games were basically, just digitized in that form so that, you wouldn't have to turn pages, play through all those. So with Dragon Quest 1, there was only one hero. And as opposed to a lot of JRPGs now, everything has a party system. But this one only had one guy. So it was tough to play because even though you had one guy, you could go against parties as well. You can go against 10 people, and all of a sudden, every single one of those 10 people that fight you kills you because it's 10 on 1. Well, what can you do? Well, even the main thing is that while you have one guy, he is a little bit OP. He can use spells, he can use attacks and things like that. So it's really understanding what's at your disposal from a turn-based JRPG stand. And this game was, I think the original was like maybe 7-8 hours. This one is probably like 10 to 12 hours when I remember rolling credits with it. So moving on to Dragon Quest 2, this one, introduced the party system, and the main thing here is that every single character you use is part of the Erdrick line as well, and they all come from different kingdoms within that universe, and some sort of cataclysm happens that causes various kingdoms to be overthrown, and it's all about, you just, one, getting revenge, and then two, just, trying to bring prosperity back to the realm. And the cool thing with this one is that It goes through something similar from Pokemon Red and Blue, as it goes into Pokemon Gold and Silver, where in Gold and Silver you can go back to Kanto. A similar thing kind of happens here because all of Dragon Quest One took place on one fairly big map, and then you play Dragon Quest Two and you realize, oh, I have a ship, I have access to this whole world, and you see things like various things in culture and whatnot, and that's really what makes Dragon Quest special. Um, in comparison to a lot of JRPGs out there. Like they show culture in different kinds of ways. They're not going to straight up call someplace China or Japan, but you really see a lot of the customs with every kingdom that you eventually explore. And Dragon Quest II was thought of by many to be maybe even the worst game in the Dragon Quest series. And that game was around like 15 to 20 hours back on the NES. And playing it now, playing this remake, which adds some content, it even adds a character, even though the character was what was in the original game, but not as a usable one. And yeah, it's now one of the stronger entries in the series, and what was once a 15-hour game is now a 40-hour game. So they really went all out with this one. They made one of the worst games in the series into one of the best, and that's why it's on my list. That's something that I did not expect at all, and it was cool seeing other reviewers like agree with me in the sense where like two worst to first, and then going from there, and then having a nice ending to really cap off the trilogy was solid as well. So Dragon Quest is going to its 40th anniversary this year. This was a great way to end the Erdrick trilogy. We're gonna have a remake of Seven coming out, I think next month, or no, yeah, it's next month, right? So yeah, we're gearing up for that, and yeah, I'm happy to see it. I don't know if this has officially put Dragon Quest in the mainstream. Hopefully it did, but yeah, like I'm happy to see a lot of people giving this its flowers. Unfortunately, this one didn't make our overall top 10, but it made my top 4.
All right. Yeah, let's get to our number threes. For me, this is Hurtling, a game that comes from a developer whose work I have enjoyed a lot. Locomotive, who made the Far series, Far Lone Sails, and Far Changing Tides, I think it is. Two games that are about piloting these ships in a very analog kind of way, where you're controlling a character who's going around and making sure you're feeding fuel into them, making sure you're keeping them from overheating and controlling them and all this kind of stuff. That works out in a really interesting way to let you explore this world, even though you're going in it, a two-dimensional plane, and kind of building in some interesting story about the state of the world as you're moving through it. And that kind of leads to this game where instead of piloting a ship, as you can probably guess from the title, you're controlling a herd of these calicorns, which are these goofy-looking goobers that I would call like a bit of a mix between like some really fuzzy goats to oxen and llamas and that kind of stuff. And you're controlling a kid who seems to be homeless. He's living in like this tunnel by himself, and sort of hear some noises inside. Let's go investigate, and it's a calicorn that's gotten its head stuck in a thing, and ends up going on this big journey with these calicorns that he finds along the way, controlling this herd, and kind of trying to keep them safe because they run into areas where you might have some enemies, sometimes just treacherous terrain that can easily sort of walk them off of a ledge, though it tends to err on the side of giving you a lot of cushioning on that kind of stuff. So it's generally pretty easy, and also you can, if you run into the worst case scenarios, you can kind of quickly quit out and reload back to a safe point, and kind of relearn from that, or you can just play it again because it's like a 5-hour game. It's not too long for that. Maybe a day or two of playing for a couple hours. You can get through it, and yeah, I found controlling it pretty easy once I got a handle on things, because initially it's a little a little weird, but the way I was thinking about it recently is it's kind of like you're guiding these guys in the opposite direction of the way you're where you're at behind them. It's kind of like if you're aiming a slingshot kind of thing, or if you want to aim to to the right, you pull back and left kind of thing. That's kind of the way you're doing that here. And if
Mm.
you're getting into any potential trouble, you can hit button to just stop everybody. Um, and so there's often easy ways to kind of just stop and like reorient yourself if you're in some of the tighter areas. Um, and yeah, I kind of liken this to Journey in a sense, where you're kind of starting off in some fairly basic areas, but you go to a lot of fantastical places. Still in like an Earth-like area, but you go through some really interesting locations on this journey. Potentially to some uh, potentially divine kind of area of sorts towards the end. There are some puzzles on the way. Nothing really too high concept, but it's a really fun and really interesting kind of game, and one that I definitely recommend checking out. And the nice thing is, like, if you explore a little bit, you can find a lot of collectibles that you can add use
Mm.
like little decorative things on your calicorns and give them little uh cute looks to them. You can also sit there and hug them and clean them up when they get dirty, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So you do run into some good little like rest points that you can hang out for a bit, kind of clean them up and all that. And yeah, it's a really fun game. One of the more impactful games I've played this year.
Mm.
And yeah, that's on I think pretty much everything at this point. So that's one to want to check out. So yeah, that's my number three. And how about you, Brandon?
My number three is Hades 2, which of course was also on our list. I'll be getting to that, of course, later, but just really liked it. And honestly, I got to be completely honest. When it came to like the last five entries on my list, it was legitimately difficult to parse them out because we were inundated with so many good games this year that it was actually a challenge to effectively rank all of them because pretty much any one of these I would have put up at in my top three. It's just that the last three of them were just so good that they they all kind of won by like a hair because we had just so many good games this year. But yeah, Dan Reb, what about you?
Yeah, mine was Trails in the Sky first chapter, which made our
Which we
overall
will be
list.
talking
So
about later. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to our number twos. Mine is Baby Steps.
Yep.
Another game that I reviewed and just really enjoyed it. It's a new game from Bennett Foddy, Gabe Cuzilo, and Maxi Botch. Um, and it is every bit as weird and interesting as you would expect from those developers. Bennett Foddy
Hmm.
made Quap, and I forget what it's like getting up with Bennett Foddy, something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, made some other stuff as well. Gabe Cuzilo made Ape Out, which is a really interesting game, especially for its audio design, which was done by Maxi Botch, who's done a great job here with the audio design, the music, the soundtrack, because you get a lot of environmental music once you get going, or you just hear like bugs and little creatures making squeaks and noises that turn into a song as you're going. And it really kind of adds some good vibes to this. And this is a game that, if you refuse to engage with it on its own terms, you're going to just probably think of this as a rage bait game for people to get, watch streamers get mad at things and then have fun with that. But I would say for me, kind of really getting into the way this game controls, because it's essentially kind of if you made Quap on a controller, where you are controlling your character's torso with the left stick. And so initially, when it has you at the very beginning of the game kind of move, it just tells you to move the stick and you just fall over because you've just
Mm.
moved without your legs doing anything and just flopped over into this water. And it's like, oh yeah, you got to move your legs with each of the triggers. You pick up your leg with the right trigger, push your stick forward, and your leg moves with that. And same with the left leg. You kind of learn how to walk the way that this game wants you to. And once I played the demo, and so I was kind of already well acquainted with how this worked. So once I got to the game itself, it worked out pretty well to be kind of a chill experience, in spite of everything about this game. Because if you're willing to engage it on its own terms, you know that you're going to fall over and lose progress, slide down hills and all that kind of stuff. And enjoy that that's part of the experience, which, for me, even reviewing it, I had to kind of rush along because I think I put about 16 hours into this when I beat it, which is probably on the long side of the other reviewers I talked to afterwards. I think I took like 40,000 steps because it tracks that at the end. Doesn't do it while you're playing it, which is probably smart because it might be too much of a stressful thing, because there's an achievement for, I think, beating the game in under 10,000 steps, and I don't know that I have it in me to do that. But as you're exploring these areas, the way I would describe the way the world works is it's kind of a horizontal map where essentially you're trying to go north to south, but if you go east or west, you'll eventually wrap around to the other side. It essentially just intelligently brings you back around to the other side. So if you go out the cave that you start in, and you just go to the left or to the right, you'll eventually come back to the entrance of the cave. And it kind of makes it so that you can explore pretty easily without ever really losing your way, because you're generally going north and south, or north to progress in any of these areas you get to. And that makes for a world that ends up being filled with a lot of side stuff. You run around and find little challenges you can do. Sometimes you win hats that you can wear until you fall over and the hat falls off and you can try and pick it up, which is hilarious. Especially if it's against the wall, because he just like slams his face into the wall as he's trying to lean down and pick it up. Because you're controlling Nate here, who is a fail son who's living in his parents' basement, smoking weed, eating Chinese food, and watching anime.
Yeah.
And sort of just gets isekai'd out of this world into a different one where he kind of has to actually do things. Not enough to actually use his arms for anything. He has to actually walk around. The most that he uses his arms for is to pick up hats. So that's kind of the extent of that. But the control you have over your legs is really really fine, because it will test you on that stuff. There's some really good challenge areas where it's like, say like a stoned walkway that has fallen, into disrepair, and is just like this like muddy hill that has these stones in it, and there's a really not easy, but a way that you can get across by, very specifically placing your feet in specific places and shifting your weight in such a way so you don't fall over, and getting across gaps like this. You have wooden walkways that have fallen into disrepair, and so you're kind of walking on the specific beams and all that kind of stuff, and making sure you're putting your feet the right way. You have a bunch of different situations you get into that are challenging you, but oftentimes fairly easy to do. It's just a matter of not panicking, I guess, and not freaking out if you fail. So reviewing it, I had to play around with the cloud save stuff in such a way that I essentially had a hard save at certain points, so I could avoid having to restart some of these areas, because there's some stuff later on where you're trying to climb over this, over these gaps and such, and there's cactuses in particularly annoying places that if you hit a cactus, your character like loses control of their body and just falls over. And so if you fall over, you go down this little river of milky fluid or whatever, and you fall back down to the bottom, and you have to walk all the way around again back to the place where you're trying to cross. So at a certain point, it's like, I need to finish this review. I need to just be able to have a hard save here, and that's kind of where I was at. But the story wise, it's a really fun story of Nate's kind of obviously suffering from anxiety and social anxiety and that kind of stuff, and not wanting to immediately accept help from these people, but also being awkward enough not to know how to accept their help, even up till the end of the game. Where there's this staircase you find, this like spiral staircase that you can climb up, or you can go up what this character tells you is called the Man Breaker, which is a big rocky, side of this cliff that is very tough to climb. But in such a way, you talk to this character and you're like, well, I don't need the stairs. I can go up here. And he's like, well, if you use the stairs, then you have to call me Lord. And I went up the stairs. He's waiting up at the top, and he's like, all right, so what do you call me? He's like, Lord. I guess Lord. Being very awkward and all this. And I guess that character is voiced by Bennett Foddy. I think he does a bunch of voices, and I think the Zelo does some of the other voices. It's got a bit of Rick and Morty vibes to it, but not in the annoying way, more in the absurdist kind of way. Because let's say there's literary influences, like a little bit of Pinocchio to this, and Alice in Wonderland, where you're the normal characters finding out everybody else here is very weird, and they have started transforming in ways that are very interesting when you first encounter this. And also find out that there are settings for censoring genitalia that you see. But the way that you see all this stuff, it's very, very ridiculous and hilarious in a sense. And you can find a lot of good side stuff here of characters and such that they won't see on the main path. So I found like a little resort-looking area. And by little, I mean these people are like 6 inches tall. And Nate goes and sits on one of them because he doesn't see him. But eventually finds out, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and like moves out of the way and like talks to them a bit. Finds out like what's going on with them, and they help him figure out what he needs to do. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. It's a really specific taste of game that I'm glad to see is resonating with a bunch of people. And yeah, it's one that resonated with me. And yeah, that's my number 2 game of the year, Baby Steps. So Brandon, what about you?
My number 2 game was the 100-Line Last Defense Academy, which, like we said before, it's on this website's top 10. I will be 100% 100% clear here. The last 2 for my list really were like a toss-up because both of them equally impressed me. My number 1 literally only won by like a hair. If my number 1 had not come out, then the 100-Line absolutely would have been my game of the year. But it's only number 2 for me. But Dan Reb, what about you?
Yeah, my number 2 wasn't a toss up, but it was undeniably one of my favorite games of the year. It's Split Fiction, which is also on.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to our number 1s, and for me, again, it's another game that's not on the list. Power Wash Simulator 2. Power Simulator 1 was my favorite game of the year that it came out, and Power Wash Simulator 2 ended up being very similar. It's a very good sequel that learned a lot from what the first game did well and what it didn't do well. So they've added some really nice tools to this game. They had an abseil. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially like the sort of a rope system that lets you, let's say, kind of let people like clean windows on tall buildings and such. You can use that here pretty smoothly to clean windows and all that, clean sides of buildings and whatnot on a number of maps. It's not available on every map, but they do have it available to use a decent bit. There's also a scissor lift that unfortunately you can't drive it around, but when you place it in places, you can get up into higher places that you may not be able to get with a ladder. nice maybe not the angles that you want, because ladders, have to be placed in certain spots of each map. Um, and yeah, this they also added a a circular washer, floor scrubber kind of thing that uh maybe still needs some work on the visual aspect of it because it does not look like it ever sits on the ground. It's looks like it's hovering above the ground a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very useful when you're cleaning the floor and just want something that will cover a big amount of space and let you kind of go over it methodically. Um, and yeah, they've tightened up some of the ways that you switch between your different washers and such. And yeah, they've essentially built it into having two different types of washers. One that's like more powerful than the other one, and one that's more accurate or whatever. I forget what the specific differences are. Two different brand washers, but you earn money and power wash points. The money allows you to buy new uh, accessories for those things like uh, longer hoses, longer or more nozzles, all that kind of stuff, and you're working your way up to the ultimate versions of those brands, which then gets you the tri-tip nozzle, which is the one of the best nozzles in the game. Essentially lets you kind of wash things pretty quickly. And the other one ends up being a dual I forget what they call it. It's like a swirling nozzle.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of do some more high power washing pretty quickly with
Mm.
that. And then the floor scrubber just kind of has its own thing that could have used some extra power to it, but otherwise, they added a lot of good stuff there. There are a couple of negatives that are worse than the first game, like the storytelling is done through text from usually the person that's hiring. But the nice thing they added here is you're part of some text chats that are more like buddies, groups of people, text groups, I guess. And so you'll get messages from them, tell you about world events going on or whatever
Mm.
that might be happening. Because in the wake of what happened in the first game, it takes place I think 3 years later. You've used the money you've earned essentially in the first game to buy a new base of operations. Now you're out of
Mm.
money, so you need to kind of get back to washing, doing more work to earn up your money to get back to where you want your business to be.
Mm.
And in the process of all this, the former mayor of Muckingham has become the county mayor. Which I don't know if
Yep.
this is a British thing or not, but um, he is overseeing the county that has a number of towns in it. Decides to do a town of the year contest.
Mm-hmm.
To which later on in the campaign he talks about how much he hates most of the towns. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's say he gets his comeuppance at a certain point, and everybody celebrates him fucking off with a big parade and all that, which is great. And he has the great name of Jeff Jefferson the 13th, because his family
Mm-hmm.
has run Buckingham throughout much of its history. Um, but
Mm.
he's just a fucking asshole. But he's trying to pin these towns against each other, trying to win this contest. And yeah, along the way, the mountain that nearly destroyed the town
Mm-hmm.
as it was about to erupt, Mount Rushless, has seemingly become active again somehow. The mechanic they had for keeping that at bay has stopped working, and so they're trying to figure out like what's going on here along the way. And luckily, things don't get as dire as um, it did in the first game. But you do get to see the moon spinning around towards the end of the campaign, so that's fun. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a game that's much like the first game, has a bunch of jobs. It takes me about 40 to 50 hours, depending on how quickly you're able to clean things. But they do have a good mix of jobs here, and one of the nice things they did with
Mm-hmm.
their level design is they have a number of these jobs that kind of evolve a bit as you finish them. And the first one is your second job, where you're doing cleaning up this bench that they find out is actually a public toilet. Um, and the way it's supposed to work is it's supposed to somehow sense that somebody has to, pee or poop. and pop out of the ground to allow them to go do that in it, but it malfunctioned, and so it's just been looking like a dirty ass bench for 20 years. So you come along and clean it, and as you clean it, you clean this bench, and then the whole thing rises out of the ground, and then you clean the outside, and the door opens up, and you clean the inside, and it's like that's a really interesting way of having these like evolving level design for this stuff. Um, you don't get as much of that for a little while, but towards the last like third of the campaign, you get a few more jobs that have that kind of stuff. You revisit the temple from the first game. You get to go inside, and that has a whole basement area that opens up once you finish the inside. And there's a few others that have things like that are really really fun when that happens. They don't overuse it too much, and I'd say it's the game that they kind of go easy on the huge jobs, and I would say like huge jobs in the first game was the treehouse and the temple at the very end. That they're jobs that you're like, all right, we're in for some fucking work here. You gotta divide and conquer because otherwise you're gonna get nowhere on this. They don't really have as much of that stuff here. There's maybe like one area, maybe, but I feel like they have more of the stuff. It's like medium size, which are good sized buildings. And they do more with more interesting like vehicle stuff. So like you get to clean a big ass like dump truck that's used for mining stuff. That's pretty fun. You get to go under it, which is always a great thing with vehicles. I think the best job in the whole game is the funhouse. Set in the carnival area that's from the first game. You get to do some other fun jobs there, and the funhouse is really cool because it has a bunch of things to interact with. It also has a big style keyboard that unfortunately doesn't work like big. Like you can step on it, it doesn't do anything. It's shooting the water on it that causes the noises to play out. But it has some fun little music things on the walls that you can also activate with the water and all that. And it's a really fun and interesting area that does more than you think it would do. And yeah, that's a game that has it kept me busy for a good 2 months there, which is great when all the bullshit was happening over the last couple months. So yeah, and I'm excited for this year because are going to start putting out more content for the game. In particular, the first one is Adventure Time themed, which seems like it should be pretty fun. And yeah, that's a Power Wash Simulator 2, a game that I'm replaying now on PS5 because I need more to do way through that. Unfortunately, they don't have any remapping for the controls because I would say they never got it right for controllers on that game. Like the highlighting the dirt thing is on R3, which is like the last place I would look for any of that kind of stuff. When I remapped it in the first game, I put it on L2 and had shooting water on R2. It made it a bit more interesting, or a bit more doable for me. But yeah, but that's my number one. So Brandon, how about you?
My number one is also the game that I think ended up being a lot of people's number one, which was Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And we will be getting to that later because it is also on our big list. And Dan Reb, what about you?
My game of the year ended up being Donkey Kong Bonanza.
All right.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, we might as well go ahead and get that one started.
Yeah. We'll get to our main list here with our number 10, which is the 100-line Last Defense Academy.
Yep.
Which you two played, so chat about it for a bit.
Let me go ahead and start this one, Brandon, since I gave you the review. So I played this game. I was given this game during GDC. I was supposed to interview the developers, and I went in unprepared because I was supposed to play the demo, and I didn't because they didn't give me the demo. They gave me the full game, and I didn't know how to start. And it was kind of dumb because I was trying to play it with them watching, and I looked like an idiot and Brandon will probably talk more about it here. All in all, while this game does mesh a lot of genres, it is primarily a strategy RPG, And it's not one of those games where you choose the movement of your character and then attack. You have to know what you want to do and then move your character. And then that was like tough for me to like really understand how to put together. But then, yeah, like once I did that, a lot of the things made sense. A lot of the abilities that you have to full on just destroy everybody on the map was totally cool. And the game also really makes fun of death, and you kind of expect that because the developers here are, you know, they're batshit insane. These are the folks who brought us Danganronpa, so we shouldn't be surprised about all the dark themes here. As for where the story goes, like it's really hard to explain it, but it's very similar to Nier Automata, where you know you beat the game but you didn't. The game revolves around like being put into this camp in another world, if you will, or dimension, and basically you have to like live life like it's Persona for about 100 days. But you know, there's only about like what, you know, 7 or 8 characters there. You see all of them go insane in their own ways. And when I was talking about the genre meshing, there's romance, there's tragedy. Obviously, like you guys are in like in high school age, so you have a lot of this immature drama. But the darkness just takes on an entirely different kind of entity, and it's really cool just going through those days over and over again and seeing all the different possibilities that happen, because it doesn't even really try to be much of a time-based thriller, but it ends up just being there. And what really makes this game work is the fact that a lot of the stuff they put into it shouldn't, but it does. And you could really tell that there was a lot of like desperation from the devs when they were putting this together. When I was talking to them, they were like, "Yeah, if this game doesn't succeed, we're gonna file for bankruptcy and all that stuff." And yeah, it's just very on brand. And yeah, the hours that I poured into this game are great. I didn't roll credits more than once just because of the lack of time. But yeah, Brandon's the one who wrote the review, so I'll go ahead.
Yeah, so funny story. When I got this game to review, as everybody who knows about our reviews knows, when you do a review, you usually have an embargo that you have to obey before you can actually start talking about it. Um, and the thing was, when I got this games for the code, I found out the embargo was like 2 weeks out, and I was like, that is strange. Because this is but when you start this game, by all accounts, it looks like it's going to be, it's going to be Danganronpa. Which I mean, if you're looking at the art direction, it's like the inspiration is obvious. But it turns out, once you think you've finished the game, no, you have not. You've basically just finished the tutorial. Because then the game throws a massive curveball at you that suddenly makes everything you've played up to that point actually start to make sense. That's the one thing about this game that's incredible, is that for all of its twists and turns, it all makes sense. There's never like any kind of big like loose thread that's out there. And then there's just the fact, like, the way the game kind of changes, because because after like the time travel thing comes in, suddenly, since you kind of know how the story is going to be going forward, you now can like adjust your choices about how you want things to go, and like the type of story that the game tells like basically shifts dramatically. There's basically a whole story arc that's essentially a survival horror story about like a slasher that's about. There's one where the game literally turns into like a literal death game, a la Danganronpa. There's one that's literally just all comedy based, and it is incredibly funny. And then there's the ones where it turns into like it gets like really, really dark, and like compared to like the Danganronpa games, which can get pretty dark, they are nothing compared to what the 100 line is. The 100 line, like right off the bat, shows you this is not that kind of game. This is something that is much more serious in nature. And it was just, I mean, there's really nothing else to put it. Just one of the cool things about it was that because of the time travel mechanic you had, one of the things that happens is a lot of the enemies that you're going up against, they essentially speak in this like foreign language that you can't really interpret. But because of the nature of the time travel mechanic, when you start the game again and start playing again, you can suddenly understand all of these people now, and the whole story is just it goes in so many crazy directions that you don't expect. And yeah, it was just if it weren't for the fact that our number one game came out, it absolutely would have ended up being my game of the year, like without a doubt.
I've got nothing to add. So, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a game that whenever I've seen people talking about it, it seems like it's a game that never ends.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, yeah, it doesn't, because there's basically like 100 endings, literally. See, that whole the 100 line thing ends up having more meaning than the title would suggest. And yeah, there literally are like 100 endings in the game. And theoretically, according to the developers, any one of them is canon. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our number 10. Our number 9 here is Blue Prince. Brandon's the only one that has it on his list. I played it a good bit, so I can talk about it as well, but I'll let you start, Brandon.
Yeah, so Blueprints came out around, I think it was either March or April of this year. It was very early on in the release cycle. And already when it came out, people were calling it a Game of the Year contender, and for very good reason. This was one of the most incredible puzzle games I've ever encountered in the years that I've been playing video games. The sheer amount of layers that this game puts in front of you and that you slowly peel back um, really is just it's amazing, and it's really hard to describe to people who don't play it, who haven't played it. The essential sort of idea is you're a heir to this rich, wealthy uncle who is essentially giving you a task, like a challenge. He's going to give you your inheritance, but in order to do it, you have to go through his mansion, which was specifically designed so that the rooms in the mansion are constantly changing and shifting around. And these rooms, there's various types of them. There's rooms that are just, there to you to move across. There's rooms that come with puzzles, rooms that have items, rooms that will give you, upgrade your stats, some that will take away stats. And ultimately, you're trying to get to the annex at the very end of the mansion. But then you find out that there's like some other stuff you have to do. You have to find a way to get the doors in the annex to open. Then you have to get the item that is in it and then leave the mansion. And then you have to go underground to open up, and then there's a bunch more puzzles. And there's always just more and more to do in this game. There's always new content to discover, new puzzles to find, new info and things to find. And these puzzles are not like your standard, like, push, block pushing puzzles or anything like that. No, 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 no. These often involve lots of things like mathematics and, colors, and it can get surprisingly complex and complicated. And you really want to be aware of your surroundings, because the game offers hints and answers for a bunch of these puzzles basically everywhere that you look. And really, it's just the sheer amount of content that game offers. And you know you think you've finished the game. No, you haven't. You've just finished the tutorial. Really, the only reason the game wasn't higher in my list, other than the fact that it had such stiff competition, was the RNG factor. Trying to get the rooms that you need to get to the area can be a lot more challenging than it probably needs to be. But yeah, it's that was the reason it was in mine.
Yeah, that was a game I enjoyed a lot. But I got to that weird point where you kind of have. I was taking screenshots of basically every bit of text or note or whatever I was finding. There's a
Hmm.
sort of weird point where you're juggling so much potential things you could advance that I just like kind of got overwhelmed and ended up not continuing to play it much longer.
Yeah.
Um, it's a game they do tell you early on, like you should have a notebook or something, and I'm like, fuck that.
Mm.
I'll just take screenshots, and it does bite you in the ass. I don't think that should excuse them from having an in-game journal kind of thing that you could potentially like take pictures of things and put
Hmm.
into it. You technically have something like that um, for what you can access of information on, your past runs and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was a game that I really enjoyed, and I ended up buying a notebook, but forgot to get like pencils or something to write in it. So I still am gonna think about potentially doing it that way, but I'm like, I'll just have to start over because I'm not gonna sit here and try and do that midway through a run
Hmm.
for that game. But yeah, that's it's a game that's very good, but it also kind of could have used a couple more like accessibility option kind of stuff to let you keep track of things on your own without having it
Theoretically.
explain
Yeah.
things for you,
Hmm.
like things. But because it's got a lot of intricate ways that things are connected, so much so that you can get a library room to put in there and rent out books that are like instruction manuals for how things work.
Hmm.
That is very important because you can also get I think a book that is like here's strategies for laying out your rooms and things that can work from somebody else that owned that house that figured out some strats for it. And it's like, all right, that's cool.
Mm.
But managing that in like screenshots and shit is. So yeah, that is our number 9, Blueprints. A very good game. I'll probably start it over at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, I never got the chance to play this one. This is the rare game that I believe was actually on Plus and Xbox Game Pass. But yeah, the main reason why I didn't really put much time into it, aside from not having any, is I did hear about needing a notebook, and normally that's a no for me, even though I like my puzzle games. But yeah, I also did see a little bit EDC, and that one had a long line. Did I imagine it scoring the 90s, and it's still cool nonetheless? Chris was also talking a little bit. One thing that really makes it impressive, as far as it getting the renown that it did, is the fact that I think this game is only available in American English. So, the Game Awards, for example, are voted on by media around the world. So the fact that it even got to the category, not everyone speaks English. So I thought,
yeah, I think it also has some issues with color stuff. I think it has certainly found ways around it. 'Cause I think especially you find a note that's like, hey, notes in this color are telling the truth, and notes in this color, and that will, if you can't see those colors clearly, then boy, it's going to be a hard game. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's our number 9, Blueprints. Number 8, Trails in the Sky, first chapter, and I think you two have it on your list, so you can talk more about it than I can. But yeah, I played 7 or 8 hours into it, and I we'll get to it. It's just one of those games where like this is gonna take a while, and I don't have that much time to dedicate to one of these.
Hmm.
So I ended up putting more time to Clair Obscure than this. But it's a very good game. Like upgrade of the original game, which itself was kind of a very retro style JRPG on the PSP that I somehow managed to find the time, mostly because it was on the PSP. I could just load it up when I had some downtime and put some time into it and kind of just keep making progress that way without
Hmm.
really missing too much. Um, and this has a lot of that, but it's in more 3D, modern Falcom style,
Hmm.
full anime. All the anime tropes
Yep.
are present here, including the very long intro and lots of talking, especially from the annoying girl character who is a know-it-all and hates anybody undermine. To which you make sure to let them know and drop kicks a kid for that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that goes places. But I'll let you too because you've put more time into it than I have. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, it's Trails in the Sky. I mean, we famously at SmashPad love the Trails series, and will sing its praises for as long as we're allowed to. Um, but yeah, this is basically like the prettiest looking game that Falcom has put out ever. Um, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. They pulled out all the stops when it came to putting in the graphical upgrade to this, and it looks so good. I also love the fact that they have decided to update um, the combat as well. Um, that's kind of like sort of the old style, but it's very much more inspired by like the one they've started doing for the more recent Trails games. So it's a bit more accessible. Um, the one reason that it wasn't higher on my list is simply due to the fact that it is a one-for-one recreation of the original. And as someone who played the first game and really loved it and pretty much had the whole thing memorized, there just weren't really any surprises for me. I still loved it because it's still Trails and it's still one of the best, scenarios in JRPGs. But I already knew like every story beat going in, so that's really the only reason it's not further on in my list. Otherwise, though, incredibly fun, and absolutely worthy of being in our top 10. What about you, Danrod?
Yeah, I was the one that reviewed this one. Obviously, absolutely loved it. Brandon already talked about a lot of the Smash Pad pretty much being stands of the series, so this was a no-brainer. Seeing this on anybody's list for this site surprises nobody. And with this one, yeah, like Brandon said, it's Trails in the Sky done all over again. But Trails in the Sky is the start of the series. It's one of the best entries. It's absolutely beautiful, and the one thing that it does that a lot of other ones don't is it totally modernized the battle system by taking everything from the crossbow system, and yeah, it just makes it accessible to a modern audience, and that's the main thing. We can sing its praises for a long time, but the main way to really enjoy the Trails series is to start from the beginning. And doing that nowadays, unless you have a decent PC, is hard because
Mm-hmm.
you got to go all the way back to the PSP for that, and not a lot of PSPs are available. And if you do, they're for rough prices. The game is even more rare. And if you want to play the sequel, that game is not available physically. You have to download it on PSP, and I don't even know if it's still available there. So yeah, like having Steam is essential for that. And this re-release, or not even re-release, but remake, allows people to play what's now the most definitive version of it. It is absolutely gorgeous. The voice acting is fantastic. Chris is saying Estelle is annoying, but she's someone that you really grow to adore. One of the best protagonists, and it's just awesome from there. And we already have the sequel coming out this summer. And one thing about this game, and I complained about it as soon as we saw the Game Awards nominees, is that it really gave people the opportunity to give it a chance. And when we saw that people gave it a chance, guess what? They loved it. This has an Open Critic 91, 92 for a reason. It is that good, and then for some reason it did not get nominated in the Game Awards for anything at all. And I think like next or this coming year is our last chance because SC or Second Chapter is the best game in the series. If that game does not get nominated, then that's pretty much it. But aside from that, I am glad that we have seen people finally get into the Trail series. I'm glad that we're seeing people enjoy it, and hopefully, they're able to stick to their guns with every remake that comes forward. Because yeah, this is one of the best series in gaming, and they really knocked it out of the park with this one. I know that there are some issues with it being like a one-for-one remake. I honestly wouldn't have it any other way, and being able to see these gorgeous visuals really made it enjoyable to relive again, because I'm not somebody that replays games anymore. So, I never really replayed FC, the original game. I tried to, but uh, if you want to be a games journalist, you can't really spend that much time doing that if you want to stay current. So, but yeah, I'm happy to see that it got onto our overall list. I wish it got higher. It probably would have if a couple more staffers were on there. But yeah, maybe the next game in the series, SC, will be there. And not only that, but like this was an essential release because now we're officially caught up. Once January 15 gets here and Trails Beyond the Horizon is released, we'll officially be caught up with Japan. And that's exactly what they need to get this series mainstream. Because once you have things day and date, you can definitely be compared to the likes of Final Fantasy and Persona. And I know that there's a lot of gatekeepers that don't want that to happen. But if you want Falcom to succeed as a company, this is what has to be.
It's gonna be weird seeing the crossbell arc in this style.
Yeah. I mean, like funny enough, Trails into Reverie is the one that went back to Crossbell most of the time, right? Like, or was it close to 3 and 4? I forget. But at the end of the day, like, that's another thing that Trails fans have struggled with. Like, we got Cold Steel 3 and Cold Steel 4 before the Crossbell duology, so we were forced to play the game out of order. And those games would be so much better if we did play the Crossbell games. So hopefully we actually get to a point where we get to see the Crossbell games with this visual style, and then we can go from there. But yeah, like you said, like Falcom really pulled out all the stops to really make this as nice as it is. And yeah, I would really be interested in seeing what more modern cities look like in Crossbell and Calvard in this visual style. I don't know if they'll get all the way there, but since the Crossbell games were 2D, like this would be.
Yeah. And I'll be clear, I didn't say Estelle is annoying. I'm saying she's that character type
Yeah.
that matures over the course of the game. She's the
Yeah.
Bulma.
Yeah, super clear.
Who's very angry a lot in early Dragon Ball until she stops being a main character. And she calms the fuck down. But yeah. Let's see. Our number 7 here is Ghost of Yotei. I think I'm the only one with this on my list. So I'll talk about it, and Dan, since I know you played a little bit of it. This is a game that continues on a lot of the good stuff that Ghost of Tsushima did, which is provide a beautiful world to explore in really interesting, intuitive ways. So much so, instead of just having like GPS like that, it just has the wind blowing in the direction as you swipe the touchpad to tell you like, oh, you need to go in this direction, kind of way, and kind of lets you learn the world a bit more. And has a really interesting story so far from what I've played that features Atsu, who from where I'm at, I've learned more about sort of the things that went up to this, but she happens to be at her home with her brother and her parents, who were murdered by the Yotei Six, this gang of criminals who've decided to kill your family. And you get to a certain point later in the game where you learn sort of the guilt that Atsu has having survived this, because she gets a sword through her shoulder that certainly causes her to lose a lot of blood, but she survives and sort of is on this revenge path, war path at these guys, but managed to hold that for until she grows up some, because she becomes a Ronin, the titular ghost who is treated as a myth by some people, the Onryo, who kills one of the six as you start the game. You're basically traipsing through this small town towards this bar that he's drinking with his men, and you kind of set it on fire and challenge him, and you learn your combat there and kill him as you start. So Yotei 6 becomes the Yotei 5 pretty much immediately. And from there, you learn later on with it's a really interesting flashback mechanic where you essentially, I think, just um, hit the touchpad
Mhm.
to where it essentially wipes the screen to show
Mhm.
the old version or the current version of the area you're in, as you kind of learn like what her family like life was like and all that. So you're like, oh, these are good parents. They're teaching her and her brother sword play, how to properly do all that. So that's where you're learning more about combat and how to upgrade your weapons and some of the side stuff with the mob. And you find out from her especially that she has this guilt of killing her family because her and her brother are sort of doing something for their mom, getting mushrooms and run into this guy that they don't know anything about who he is, but find out he's tied to the guy that wants to take over the area. And that her parents had been refusing to join them, and so kind of
Mhm.
leads them back to their home and know that they are gonna kill their parents and her brother and leave her for dead and all that. And it's like that's a really interesting way of doing all this stuff. And yeah, with the campaign, it is more freeform than the first game was, so that you're kind of left with lingering trails to go after some of the other guys. And sort of it's a big mechanic where you have these cards for each of them that you can talk to people and be like, "Do you know anything about this person? This part of the Yote Six?" They'll tell you like, "Oh yeah, they're holed up here in this part of the map," and you can like immediately go over and try and deal with them, or you can talk to more people and learn more about what's going on with them and all that. And it kind of makes for a really interesting vibe where the the first game
Mhm.
I screwed around a lot and did a lot of side stuff because the world was so peaceful to explore. Even with
Mhm.
the bandits you would run into from the Mongol army, and all that. And this one has similar vibes where you kind of go explore and you'll find things and maybe even run into bad guys that you had not gotten any side quest information for. But it's like, oh, I found before I found even the home or done any of that stuff really. Um, I found this bad guy hold up. That was one of the bounties, and like had to go up and work my way towards him because they, was a guy that was good with like explosives type stuff. So I had a lot of like fireworks and explosives being thrown around. And I had to work my way up in sort of a bit of a cover based shooter kind of fashion to deal with it, and did that and like went to the first inn and like, oh, you already did this, okay, well, give you the rewards for that. But yeah, you kind of collect a lot of this information as like things that you can check out on the map screen, which is a pretty interesting way of doing things. So yeah, it's a game that does a lot of good stuff, and the combat is really fun, much like the first game. Um, it has a lot of good improvisation going on. Where I think in the video I recorded for this, I was going to the inn and went to go, just going through the fields, and a bear just shows up, and I'm like, oh fuck, I don't want to deal with a bear. And I decided, well, let's try and deal with this bear, and I hit it a couple times after it had decided to run away. It was done dealing with me, and I was just like trying to start a fight with this bear, but it still wouldn't deal with it. But went back to the inn and like did some upgrades and such, collected my bounty, and went to go around, and there's these guys I ran into who are like, oh, are you the Onryu? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. Like, all right, we got a bounty for you. We're gonna fuck you up. And I'm like, oh, you are. They fucked me up.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, that was fun to get challenged in that way. There's like five guys that happen to have diverse enough weapon set that jumping back in randomly after not playing it for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
I was a little cold and unable to deal with it because yeah, the big thing with the combat is like you get different weapons that you should be swapping between to deal with certain types of weapons. Um, I had like gone up on the mountain to deal with that and get the ability to have two katanas, dual katana kind of style that is good against certain types of weapons, and the regular katana is good against others.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really switching the way I should. Eventually just got beaten. Nothing really complicated about that, but you just respawn it back at the end where you last were. Nothing really lost there, but it has some good Breath of the Wild vibes to it, especially in the way that you pull out your binoculars and kind of look around and highlight things in the environment, and that adds it to your map. Explore later and find new things, and it's like, yeah, this is a really good game. Unfortunately, it came out in a year with a lot of other really good games that managed to capture more of the zeitgeist. So I think this game is done very well in spite of that. So, especially for the people that are mad about it starring a woman, especially a cool person like Erika Ishii. She was like one of the most entertaining people at the Game Awards. That they constantly made sure to show what she was doing. She was having a good time. But yeah, that's Ghost of Yotei, a really good game. Definitely well worth being at this point on our list. So, I don't know if you have anything to add, Danrub.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot. This is a game that I wish I had more time to play. I was playing a whole lot of Octopath Traveler 0 around the time I had time to play Ghost of Yotei, and when I finally got it, I was like, hey, I have like 50 hours in Octopath Traveler, so I should be near the end. I didn't realize I was lying to myself. So, yeah, that's unfortunately the way it fell there. But from everybody that's been talking about it, like, it just sounds like it's a whole lot more Ghost of Tsushima, which is not a bad thing at all. Ghost of Tsushima was our collective. Yeah, this is definitely one that I want to make time for again. I don't know how you feel, being further than me, but like in the time that I've played it, I feel like the game is significantly harder than the last. Like, not a whole lot, but I do feel that there's definitely some more challenge there. And I haven't decided whether that's a good or bad thing, just because I know that I have to put some more time into it. But in the time that I did play it, I did enjoy the open world traversal. I do love the fact that, when you're riding on the horse and you go through the flowers, it makes you go faster. I did enjoy the ability to go back into the past and see, what Atsu's, and yeah, it's just a pretty cool way to see like the visuals take that next step up, because obviously the original game was beautiful, and this one is, probably one of the best looking, or probably one of the three best looking games on the PS5 to begin with. So yeah, I'm looking forward to diving back into that one, and I hope I really do find the time to do so.
Yeah, I don't know if it's harder so much as I think it has areas that are not well scaled to you, that you can kind of try out those challenges if you want. I did get stuck in a little quest where
I think a lot of the challenge came from trying to mix the weapons up, which was something that I didn't really, stomach easily the first time around. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of figuring out the motor tactics and going from there.
Yeah, I remember getting not stuck, but I was in this battle centered around a fisherman that was getting bossed around by bandits. That one would have a bear show up every once in a while, and two had like two or three archers along with a guy with a gun and like a few swordsmen. I was like, this is really tough, but I, kept retrying it and learning. Like, okay, I should take down all the ranged people first because they can really mess you up if you're not paying attention. And eventually got through it, but it was really kind of rewarding to really get down in the combat system and figure out how to best take down these group of enemies.
And I think another big part of it, not that it really affected much, but I did see Assassin's Creed Shadows through all the way to the end. And I don't know, I guess I was just pretty much tired of like that method of open world gameplay. Not that they're really similar in that regard, but when the original came out, it was compared to Assassin's Creed, and now that we finally have that, these are good to look at. I just need to find myself in the right headspace.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard some people that invested a ton of time into Assassin's Creed. That seems like the bad idea. Like they should have played what they wanted to play of that and not try to force themselves through it, and then maybe check out Ghost of Yotei that feels a bit more less demanding of you. You're not dealing with, loot or stats or any of that kind of stuff as much. Because like in the first game, you just collect more cosmetic stuff, but you do get things like perks and such that can boost things. But yeah, it's less of an RPG as Assassin's Creed tends to be. I played Shadows, was like, yeah, this is cool, but it's gonna go for a while, and expect a lot of with their two protagonists. I feel like that did it a disservice, because you see Yasuke at the beginning, and then you don't see him for a long time. Anyway, it's like,
Yeah.
I have not gotten back to him. It's like when I tried to play Assassin's Creed 3 and I never got to Boston. Because the stuff up to it was not bad, but it's just a lot.
Not to make it a tangent, but then when you eventually do get to Yasuke, you find out it's not that fun using him anyway.
So yeah, that's our number 7. We'll move over to number 6, which is Hollow Knight Silk Song. I believe I'm the only person that has it on their list here. I think it's only played it. But yeah, it's Hollow Knight Silk Song is a fantastic game. It's taking a lot of what worked really well about Hollow Knight and being willing to bravely change it. So yeah, I made the weird mistake of buying it on PS5 and PC because it broke storefronts, all the storefronts at launch. Could not buy it on Steam for good bits, but then found out this is a bad Steam Deck game because the Steam Deck's controls are not great for the precision that this game wants.
Yeah.
So that kind of led to me being like, I played a decent bit on a Steam Deck, and then as I was doing fights, boss fights, I was like, I should probably just play this on, my monitor with a controller, and that ended up being a lot better. And be like, yeah, the Steam Deck's not great controller wise, but this is a game that's a successor to Hollow Knight because you're playing as one of its best characters that you run into, Hornet, who was, despite not having any voice acting per se, is one of the most expressive characters of that first game. They build a whole game around her and her abilities, which if you played Hollow Knight, you know that she has a lot of diagonal attacks and such. A lot more jumping around and that kind of stuff, which the vessel from the first game, not a slouch in that area either. But you're kind of dealing with that for much of the first 5 hours or so, depending on how quickly you progress through things. Because yeah, her main jump attack is a diagonal attack. So you can't necessarily have the pogo bounce kind of thing that's Hollow Knight had was built around. So it kind of throws a lot of challenge into the platforming of this, but you also get a run at a certain point, and you can get big long jumps that way, as well as it's a dash as well. It kind of lets you get through the map pretty quickly, which I don't think Hollow Knight ever had any sort of run to it. You kind of moved around pretty steady pace. And what else? Your weapon has more of a throw to it. It's sort of one of your special abilities. Is sort of a throw. And yeah, healing is different. Instead of having these juice vials that you filled up to be able to heal with, here it's silk that is being spun with you're getting more of that with every hit on an enemy you're getting. And you max that out, and that heals up to, I think, three health bar chunks. And so you're not, holding it down like the first game to keep filling it up. That's a good bit difference. You're also using that bar for some special attacks type stuff. To get the economy under control a bit, where the first game you could just write out tons of currency for the longest time if you don't know where to spend it. Whereas here they have two different currencies. There's shards, which you can use for some things, but also where I am at, you can use that to, you get a kind of a shinobi knife to throw. And when you go back to a save point, a bench, you use the shards to refill that back up to I think it's 15 is the max. And so it's kind of a really interesting mechanic there that's limited. It has a max to it. The beads are sort of more of an economy currency that you're using to buy things. But you do use shards to buy stuff in specific instances.
Mm.
But they keep that maxed out. The beads can keep going, but only certain enemies drop it. It's usually all the pervert enemies you run into. And I say they're perverts because these are sort of infected enemies of a sort that seem to have something take over their minds. Because whenever they like jump to attack at you, they're usually doing like ugh, really kind of moaning kind of noises at you in a way that's like really hilarious to it. When you're seeing these guys, so yeah, it's I always run into them and like, oh no, here's the pervert zone, um, with it. So yeah, it's those guys, those kind of enemies, and there's some that don't do that. That still drop beads, but you'll run into that kind of stuff to earn, and those are the things you're usually spending on. Um, some items and such. You also spend those on buying benches in areas they don't have free benches in every zone or new area you're getting to. Sometimes you have to spend them. So they kind of keep trying to get you to spend them. But in like a Souls style fashion, you do get to a point where you can uh, take those beads and you string them up into like a necklace that stays with you between deaths versus when you die. It'll keep your shards and your beads, your loose beads, essentially. And another big change there is when you die, you don't have to like kill a shadow version of yourself. It's essentially like almost like a silk cocoon of sorts that you need to break, and then you get your stuff back for that. So yeah, there's a good bit of nuance going on here, and the thing you do with the crest is different. Whereas before it was just essentially like you have X amount of points to equip these crests, and they'd have different values to them to fill that up. But here they kind of build out these different, they almost look like different kinds of like skill tree type of stuff to them. Designs for things that you can equip to them, and they've separated the crests into different types. And they're color coded for that. So you're like, oh, you can only equip one of these kinds and one of this kind, one of this kind. But you'll be able to have some upgrades for that crest holder that can let you change how much of the add additional spots for some of that stuff. And I just got to the point where I can change out the core of this crest that essentially changes how your character controls. So the second one you get is essentially the vessel style of control from the first game. So you do a downward attack when you do a jump attack, like the first game. So if you want that kind of thing, that's a thing you can play a bit into it. And kind of do that. Though I went back to the Hornet style. So yeah, it's a game that is taking a lot of what uh, was iconic about Hollow Knight and being willing to change things about it to make a new experience here. The things that kind of stay the same is a lot of the types of level design here, as well as the boss fights are very challenging. So much so that people think they're incredibly hard, like more so than they were in the original. And having this year being or last year being the year that I really got into Hollow Knight and almost beat it, I'm basically at the point where I need to do like the last couple things to get to the good ending. So I'm basically trying to, play through the bad endings and then work my way back up through the good ending stuff. Just basically depending on how much you want to do at the end of the game. With that, and the game gets very tough. The game gets incredibly hard. And the way that this as a Metroid game works is that how much time you're willing to invest in exploring can make those boss fights easier for you, because you'll get new press and ways to improve your some of your ways you're attacking and be able to survive some of these fights. So yeah, like how much you're mainlining things. And I've gotten to a really creepy area where there's a bunch of bugs that have been strung up on this silk. It's like All right, there's some fucked up shit going on here. I don't know that. I went back to the early areas and fast traveled out of there. I was like, I'll come back here later, but right now I don't need this creepy shit for now. But now I'm coming back to it, trying to figure out like what's going on here. But yeah, it's everything that was good about the first game with more in kind of every way. And some people are not a fan of that. They wanted Hollow Knight 2, and it's like I'm sure they'll get to a Hollow Knight 2, but right now they were working on this featuring a different character, and of course they so yeah, that's Hollow Knight. I don't know if either of you have anything to add for that.
Not really, because I haven't played it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played the original. I like games like this, but again, it's just a time factor, and this was not going to be on my list since I never.
Yeah. So we'll get to our number 5 here, which is Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I played a good bit of this. It did not make my list because I got to the third stage and then just had other things happen and never came back to it. The third stage also happens to be a very bland visual stage because it's like a desert area. It's like the other two were very great looking, one was like a bit of a grassy, beachy kind of area. The other one was a big field that looked really nice, and get to like a deserty dirt area. I was like, okay, I feel like I've heard some of the middle stages are not as visually impressive as the others, but it does get better. But it has like a little bit of a lull in sort of the early to mid part of the game once you get past the first couple stages. But I've enjoyed it a lot. It's really nice as sort of a more freeform 3D platformer, taking the ideas from Super Mario Odyssey and kind of building that out so that, it has the same style of there's bananas everywhere, but you only need a certain amount to actually progress. But yeah, it does not try to force you to mainline things if you don't want to. But I end up wanting to get everything, and that slows me down a lot. Because especially like you're busting through the ground and you find a lot of maps to other collectibles, which is useful because you get cosmetic stuff for Donkey Kong and Pauline that can improve stats and such. And this is also very weird that this Donkey Kong game is one that has, skill trees and clothing items with perks to them that improve like your swimming speed and this other stuff that's going on. It's like, boy, this sure is not necessarily what I was expecting out of this game. But it's a solid addition because it's like the first, the only 3D platformer in this franchise that anybody's given a shit about. Because Donkey Kong 64 was like, well, there's a lot here, but you certainly pulled a lot of bullshit to make sure people had to replay these things so much. Because there's a lot of collectibles for each character that are not collectible by the other character. You had to replay a lot, but here, just like, hey, go do what you want. You'll eventually finish it, and you can enjoy things along the way. And yeah, it's a very cool one of these. So yeah, I'll let Danner continue on since it's his number 1 game.
Yeah, this is my game of the year, and it's really tough for me to like just try to choose based on what kind of categories. But my number 1 thing is enjoyment and fun, and Donkey Kong Bonanza was by far the most all year. As soon as I opened the game and put it on my Switch 2, I was hooked. I very rarely did I take any breaks, and yeah, I just played this from top to bottom and enjoyed just about every minute of it. And yeah, like obviously there's going to be some comparisons to Super Mario Odyssey. It's the same developer, same studio. Totally makes sense, but it also has its own charm. Chris just talked about Donkey Kong 64 sort of being just, mid, if you will. I enjoyed it for what it was as a kid, but I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64. But Donkey Kong Bonanza really, really surprised me. There is a lot of heart to this game. One thing that I really enjoyed that I don't know if too many people have mentioned is the fact that every zone that you go to will have a number of rest areas, and in those rest areas, if you choose to go to sleep, you'll regain your health and stuff, but you also have a short conversation with Pauline. and each and every one of those was extremely heartfelt. It really gave a wholesome vibe to the game that I haven't really felt in a while, much less in a platformer. And in fact, the last time I really had anything similar to this was with Super Mario Odyssey. I remember tearing up in Super Mario Odyssey when I was going through New Donk City for the first time and having to play through that 2D level with the game's lyrical theme song in the background. And, like Mario Odyssey, this game also has a lyrical theme song. And when you beat it, you hear like a certain melody that you hear in the original Donkey Kong games with lyrics. And it's like, wow, they really, pulled out all the stops to make sure that this really was a family game through and through. It doesn't make any sense from a narrative timeline standpoint. I mean, Pauline is the age that she is, yet the game still has Cranky Kong, Dixie Kong, Diddy Kong, they're all in there. I don't know if you want to call that a spoiler, but it's Donkey Kong, so you shouldn't really care. And yeah, like it's all just pure fun, and I really enjoyed it. One thing that made Odyssey Breath of the Wild special was just random things that you can find. Donkey Kong Bonanza does that and a whole lot more. I think there were like around 900 moons to find in Mario Odyssey, and Donkey Kong has like 1,000 Bonandium gems. Almost everything you do can lead to a Bonandium gem, including digging. And, digging is a huge part of the game. Like, every level in the game is destructible to a point. Like, for example, you can't dig through steel, obviously. But aside from that, you can do whatever you want in this game, and they're not going to punish you for it. One thing that I did a lot of in Mario Odyssey was like this hacky jump, where I did a long jump onto Cappy for another jump, and some more jumps there. And there are similar things that you can do with Donkey Kong and the abilities that you have, and the game does not punish you for it. And the best part about it is after you roll the credits the first time, there's a whole lot more content there. And, not to delve too far into spoilers, but there was also some wholesome moments there that, made me feel a certain way. And I was like, wow, there's really a whole lot of depth that went into both the story and the gameplay here. And at the same time, if you found it easy, the hidden parts are extremely difficult. They make you earn your way through to the point where the DLC was even a roguelite. So, yeah, like there's a whole lot to like and enjoy with Donkey Kong Bonanza. Is it worth? And the funny thing is, this game is worth $70, whereas a lot of the Switch 2 library is $80. So it's like, all right, let's see if you can make it worth it. And this by far is the best game on Switch 2, and I hope that this is a microcosm or a preview of things to show with the Switch 2, because this is definitely the ace in the hole for Nintendo. Forward to seeing more in 2026. But yeah, Donkey Kong Bonanza just made me have fun in really so many ways, and I just hope to see more than that with the Switch 2.
All right, so yeah, let's get to our number 4 game, Split Fiction, which you two are the only one with anything to say about it, so...
Yeah, and unlike Dan Reb, I didn't actually play it because I don't have anybody I can play it with. But I did watch a bunch of people play it though, and what I saw genuinely impressed me, and crazy. Split Fiction is so Split Fiction was essentially their follow-up to It Takes Two, which in and of itself was also an incredibly fun game to watch, and. Unfortunately, unlike with Split Fiction, fortunately, Split Fiction doesn't really have anything that is traumatizing as some of the stuff that happens in It Takes Two.
That's debatable, but I know what you're alluding to. Nothing like that, but there is some dark, crazy stuff in this game.
Oh, it gets pretty dark, obviously, but it's this amazing sort of story. These two authors, one of them writes science fiction, the other writes fantasy. They get tricked into becoming part of this corporate project that is essentially trying to take all of their stories and essentially make them into virtual reality stuff. But it very quickly becomes obvious that this is essentially a riff on AI, more or less, and just the way the game switches both between genres, but also just the stuff that happens. It Takes Two rather famously has a bunch of stuff happen really quickly and constantly like shifts the type of game that it is. Split Fiction does the same thing, but is somehow even more visually spectacular than It Takes Two was. And It Takes Two was an incredible looking game. So obviously it ended up in my list for a reason, because damn, was it good.
Yeah. Obviously, like I again, my biggest thing is fun, and as far as fun goes, this was like easily some of the most fun I ever had. But at the end of the day, and unfortunately we have to do it, we have to compare it to what came before, and there's It Takes Two. In most senses, It Takes Two was a better game. In my opinion, it had a better story, and Brandon talked a little bit about the way it just mixes genres and it does it perfectly. And Split Fiction does the exact same thing. And that's the thing, in this day and age, when you don't do anything different, it just feels old. And unfortunately for Hazelight, that's the case there. Now it sounds like I'm down on it, but hold on. If you guys watched my our top 10 video, I did that one. I pretty much spoiled the game. I get to the very last level, and this is where it's truly Split Fiction. We just mentioned that the protagonists focus on sci-fi solely and then fantasy solely, and then all of a sudden things get crazy in the last chapter because you have to play through a level that actually has both aspects in the same universe, but not. It's hard for me to really explain, but if you watch the video, you'll see everything on a split screen, and then that split screen moves. And it's not evenly split either. There'll be some parts where it'll be 3/4 fantasy. There'll be some parts where it'll be 5/6 sci-fi, and you have to be able to maneuver yourself in a way where the camera won't kill you. So it kind of like goes through the fourth wall in that way, and I just found that to be incredibly exciting. The other great thing about Split Fiction are with what they call side stories. So as you go through the main campaign, you'll find these bubbles that lead to instances that are either dreams or old pieces of fiction that both Mio and Zoe wrote. And again, I put this one in my video. There is one where you play as pigs. Again, this is a two-player game, completely cooperative. One pig has the ability to be a slinky, so this is how that pig is able to reach high places. And then the other pig can sort of fly. And the way it flies is it farts, and it farts rainbows.
Yep.
It makes no sense, and it's absolutely hilarious for doing it. And the way to get through this area is to find certain apples to open doors to different areas, and you get to the end. And then in the end, you get to a slide, and it's really whimsical. You've played all those Mario games where you run down a slide, and they're super fun, but also they're super dangerous. Like think of the mine carts in Donkey Kong. Now at the end of the slide, the pigs run into a grinder, and yeah, they don't really die. They become hot dogs, and all of a sudden, these hot dogs can be grilled. You can put ketchup on them, and you put mustard on them. And what happens to hot dogs? They get eaten, and
They
like
get
that's
eaten.
the end of that side story. And I'm like, oh man, they definitely go places with this game, and that's just one thing of darkness that I talked about. It's not quite Moon Baboon from It Takes Two or the Princess Elephant, but there are definitely ways that I wouldn't call these family games, but at the same time they're just a blast to play. The platforming is perfect. The music is totally fine along with it, and every genre it tries to bend from action RPG like Diablo to space shooters to Mario platformers. They just do them all right, and it just feels so good. The one thing that I have to warn people when they play this game is, especially if you're playing with somebody not used to video games, there are more timing. There are more time segments here, and it's not that they're super difficult, but if you're playing remotely, or one person's in one house and the other person is if you're playing online, sometimes there might be some lag that'll affect your timing, and that can be a struggle. But if you get through those, it's a really fun experience. And yeah, Hazelight is now like one of my favorite developers. Whenever Joseph Fares is doing something, I'm paying attention, and yeah, that's just how great it is. Again, Split Fiction was my number 2 this year. That's about it.
All right. We have our number 3 game now, and it is
Mm-hmm.
Dispatch.
Yep.
And much like that, that is also a game I have not played, so you two are free to talk.
Well, I know Dan Reb probably didn't like it quite as much as I did. I mean, he liked it, but I probably liked it more than he did. Um, like I said, Dispatch is essentially the sleeper hit of 2025, mostly because it's sort of spread by word of mouth. And essentially, what it is it's a Telltale style game made by people who used to work for Telltale Games, teaming up with the people at Critical Role and a couple of internet personalities, and they end up creating one of the most entertaining adventure games I've played in a long time. The the characters are all immediately likable. I like how it sort of develops this sort of independent sort of new superhero universe, but it does it by not really telling you everything. You sort of learn a lot of this stuff through like implications and things like that. Like the idea that there's like whole corporations who have like superheroes on their payroll. The fact that because there's just so many superheroes in this universe that a lot of them have day jobs or a lot of them, have like regular lives to deal with. There's the fact that, the guy that you're playing is a superhero who is more of a legacy superhero and is like the kind of superhero that doesn't actually have any superpowers. They have a really fancy like mech suit that they use. Bringing up the fact that he basically more or less put himself into poverty just maintaining the thing, even though he apparently had an inheritance from his father and, the life insurance money and stuff that happened. And then there's just sort of the getting to know the people at Z Team and, the combining all the superheroics with the Office stuff somehow just works incredibly well. And the fact that it also just like I said, the characters themselves, all of them grew to be extremely likable. Even the ones like Blaze, who's a total asshole, ended up being incredibly likable. The fact that they're basically all supervillains who are trying to go on the straight and narrow, and some of them are doing it better than others. And just the relationships you build up with these characters, especially the ones you build up with Blonde Blazer and Avizagao, who are kind of like the Betty and Veronica of the story. One of them is very straight-laced, the other is the bad girl, and they both ended up being incredibly likable. Also, just in general, it was really funny. It was really well written and at times hysterically funny. I was surprised at how much I ended up laughing, simply because of the absurdity of some of the situations. Also, the like overall like the managing mechanic that you do, where you're dispatching all these heroes out. Ended up being extremely addictive. Um, and I'm not exactly sure why. It just, for some reason, it just felt really satisfying to, send these heroes out and send them out into the field, picking the ones that seem best for the job, upgrading them. Also, just the fact that there's just a bunch of random shit that can happen out there in the middle of it. Some of it that's scripted, some of it that isn't, and it was really fun. I really loved Dispatch, and frankly, I want them to hurry up and make a season 2 because I want to know where this story goes. But yeah.
Let's go ahead and a quick story. During San Diego Comic-Con, me and Miles, another member of the staff, went to the Hilton because that's the place to have drinks after the con closes. And there was this guy who just randomly started talking to us, and then he was like, yeah, well, what do you guys do? Blah blah blah. And then he's like, yeah, my name is Pierre. I work on this game called Dispatch. I don't know if you guys heard of it. It's a really small indie. And both me and Miles being who we are, yeah, we know what Dispatch is, and like Brandon said earlier, there really wasn't a whole lot of marketing with this game at all. So it's like if you're in the industry, if you're a fan of it, you know what it is. If you're not, you had to have looked into it, and I'm glad people did. But anyway, the way we talk about why we know Dispatch, aside from the fact that the demo had just come out, was because we're all in a Fantasy Critic League. For those of you that don't know Fantasy Critic, basically it's like fantasy football, except instead of drafting NFL players, you draft video games with the hopes that they score high on OpenCritic. And one thing you have to do is make a counter pick, and a counter pick is taking a game that someone else chose and saying it's not going to score as high. And my counter pick was Dispatch. So basically, I was like, yeah, I know Dispatch. I'm expecting that game to be bad. So yeah, the guy I ended up meeting was Pierre Charette, who's the co-founder and CCO for Ad Hoc Studio. And yeah, he is totally like laughing at us right now. But also thanks to him, I was able to give 6 people on the staff codes because he was able to be he was super nice about it. So yeah, funny story there. But yeah, I love this game actually. I've already played this game 2.5 times. So when I first played it, yeah, I wasn't like I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it. I didn't think it was as great as what people were saying, just because I've played a Telltale game before. I know what a good Telltale game is, and like this was there, but it wasn't really the same in that regard. Like there was no, you don't manually move your character anywhere. You're really only like one person, but at the same time, like the cast and ensemble were tremendous. And what really sets this apart from Telltale games or Don't Nod games is just its system. Like all of the Telltale games look the same. Like if you took out all the zombies from Walking Dead, you wouldn't be able to tell Batman from Walking Dead to Tales from the Borderlands. They all look the same. Dispatch has a distinctive look, and while you can go ahead and compare it to Invincible, which we're all gonna do just because of the mature superhero themes, it had a look of its own, and it looked really good doing it. And not only did it look good, you have Hollywood celebrities in there, you have known voice actors, you have celebrity personalities. All of the cast did an extremely great job being the characters that they were, and the writing was tremendous. It was wonderfully written. When I made all the big decisions I went ahead and watched some YouTube videos to see how they went. Because, for example, I went with Invisigal as like my,
As did the majority of the players, apparently.
yeah, yeah. And then like when I watched what happened when you choose Blonde Blazer, I was like, I don't know if this was intended to be canon, but this is the better story. So, like I don't know, I just definitely had more fun in that regard. The reason why I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, which is the lowest score on Metacritic or on OpenCritic, is because I hate the hacking. The hacking to me just absolutely sucks. Like they do a good job at really teaching you how to do it, but at around episodes 5 through 8, they become hard for no reason. Like it feels like Pac-Man. We are running away from ghosts with their antiviruses, and there are some points where you really have to time your electrocution things right in order to get rid of them, and at the same time solve the puzzles. And that's one thing that I'm really struggling with as I try to get to the platinum. But yeah, like before I wasn't that big a fan of the dispatching either, but yeah, I definitely see the appeal to it now. I actually played the game with my girlfriend because she just saw it on LinkedIn and was interested in knowing what it was about. And then I talked to her about it, showed her the way, and I played for her as she gave me the directions. And yeah, she enjoyed what she played. She also chose Invisigal, but at the end of the game, they were not involved in a romantic relationship. I don't know if you can just go ahead and figure things out from there. But yeah, like it was a totally fun time. And the one thing, going back to my to me meeting Pierre Charette was like, yeah, dude, if this game is going to be good, you cannot miss your release dates with your episodic structure. And they didn't. They had 2 episodes a week. And not only that, every episode was short. They were around, 30 minutes to an hour, nothing more than that. And the only time it was more than that was the finale, which you expect. And while I thought the finale was a little bit QTE based, I had a lot of fun with it. The keep up moment with what's his character, Brandon? The one that Jeffrey Wright played?
Phenomenon?
No. Jeffrey Wright, the fast
Oh,
guy.
Trackstar, aka
Yeah,
Chase.
track star. Yeah, the moment he has his keep up moment, and I'm not gonna talk about what happens after. Yeah, that made me feel something, and yeah, you know, and that's why I enjoyed it. It's number 9 on my list just because I thought all these games were great, but yeah, this was definitely a dark horse contender for Game of the Year. As we were counting votes, Hades 2, which we'll talk about in a bit, was definitely leading, but Dispatch got a lot of attention, and it for every reason it deserved it. And I don't know if they're working on a sequel yet because from everything that we've heard about their financials, they've already surpassed their 3-year expectations. So let them rest, let them enjoy their bonuses. So yeah, that's all I got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get to our number 2, Hades 2.
Yeah.
It's a game that I've played a little bit of. I played a few hours in early access and was like, yeah, this seems like it's going to be good. I'll just wait until it's 1.0. And that's early access version had a couple things that were probably not great, particularly the tools,
Mhm.
because you would only be allowed to take one tool out to collect one sort of material that you could collect. Whereas
Mhm.
now you can just have them all, just collect that stuff as long as you have the tool that corresponds with
Mhm.
gathering that material. That's a nice thing. I forget what else they've changed. I obviously did not put much time into that early access because I didn't want to burn myself out. But unfortunately the game came out in late September when a bunch of other stuff was also coming out. It was just sort of
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is about the worst time for me to put any more than a couple hours into this. So I think I'm on.
Mhm.
When I did the video, I was like on my 5th run. So I didn't have any of the tools to collect any of that stuff. It was just luckily had a good enough run that it lasted for the whole time I was recording. So that was good. But yeah, it's not changed a ton about it other than you have Melanoe as the main character who's probably less charismatic as Zagreus is. Um, Probably because she was not raised with the rest of her family, um,
Mhm.
and raised by somebody who is incredibly low key in
Mhm.
everything that she does. But yeah, that was also another game where it's like, yeah, playing this on the Steam Deck sucks because it's not able to keep up with the action as much as I need it to. So I have to just play it on my PC itself. Um, but yeah, it's got all the good story stuff going on. Maybe a little more going on with the base, especially the card thing that you're kind of building out as you go for that. But yeah, I'm still early, so things are still unlocking and all that. So I can't really say too much else, but it seems quite good. But you have it on your list at number 3, so feel free to take over.
Yeah. I mean, what else can I say? It was more Hades. The first Hades is damn near gaming perfection, and they basically was like, well, don't mess with the formula. So they made more Hades, and by more Hades, I don't just mean they made another Hades game. I mean they made another Hades game that had even more Hades content than the first Hades did. Um, there are more characters. They brought back some of the fan favorites from the original. They There's a whole other half of the game that's basically cordoned off until you get to a certain point, basically showing once again that there were, once again how much of a rabbit hole these games can be if you're paying attention. Also, it just had an amazing freaking soundtrack. The Sirens in particular, they play those same 2 or 3 songs. I don't care. They're damn good songs. And if you played the original Hades, you know what you're getting into. You're essentially playing a roguelite where you're um, going through a cycle of various stages that are sort of randomly shuffled around until you finally get to the last boss, Kronos, where you can then kill him. But obviously, killing Kronos doesn't end the game, it still keeps going. and there's more stuff involved with it. And there's all bunches of characters that you end up really growing to like because they're just unlike their mythological counterparts, they're all surprisingly very self-aware and kind of realize the absurdity of their situation, which is kind of why the original Hades was so endearing because it took all the parts about Greek mythology that don't really make sense and kind of openly admits that some parts of this really don't make any sense. um, but yeah, it was Hades. It was Hades too. It was more Hades. There's really nothing more to add, really.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go for Hades 2. And our number one, Clair Obscure Expedition 33,
Yep.
which all three of us had on our list.
Yep.
In different spots, but I'll kick it off here. The fun thing on the video that I made is that I basically just met SK, and he's like, "Oh, go over and meet my friend Francois. He can help you out with this thing."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, they run into him and think he's a rock, and it just cascades into this situation where he's just pissed off at them. It's like, "All right, fuck you guys, I'm fighting you."
Yeah.
Because he's a very angry turtle, whatever the turtle is in this weird place.
Yeah.
That he wipes out my people constantly, but I managed to win because I just couldn't get the timing on the dodge for his big attack. Well, luckily he's not super tough, but the one attack can wipe out a character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a very good Mario or Paper Mario style RPG where you have a more active battle system that relies on your ability to either dodge, parry, or jump to avoid attacks or diminish them. You get the opportunity, plenty of opportunities to learn the patterns for some of these enemies. Some of the bosses can be tough to practice any of that. Luckily, there are guides out there who will kind of explain some of that ahead of time if you want to get at least a grasp on that. But yeah, where I am at, I'm still fairly early, but I've got a fourth character, and like the one negative I really have to say is there's no experience sharing for characters. So the person that's on your bench essentially just keeps falling behind. And it didn't help when I got CL and she was already a level behind everybody else. I think it was at 16. And she was at 15. And I was like, and your enjoyment of having these characters in your party depends on you enjoying the mechanics of how they work, because each character works differently. Your ones starting, have pretty simple designs, and then you get your Luna, who is very interestingly designed of collecting these stains from using these skills, and then use that to perform other skill attacks. And along the way, a lot of those attacks will ask of you to hit the button to essentially max out your damage for that attack in a very kind of Paper Mario style way. And Mael was a really interesting third kind of design of these stances that I don't really enjoy that as much. I mostly keep her in either stanceless or defensive stance. But if I also have another negative is that you unlock a lot of skills for most of these characters, and your ability to figure out which ones fit the way you want to do things can be a challenge, especially when it's like Luna's thing where she has all these different elemental attacks. It's like, all right, which ones do I want here that will feed into these others? They kind of have a bit of a good flow to it. And it's like, that could be really challenging for a lot of that. But the thing it allows you to do is really break the game in an interesting way. Because you get these Pictos that are essentially like these bonus perks, essentially. And after you do 4 attacks with, win 4 battles with those Pictos, they get upgraded to being used as, I forget what they call it. It's it's essentially a way of equipping those Pictos without having to equip them. You just get these points that you can bump up with a thing you collect fairly often throughout the game. As well as they level up, they get more points to spend on that, and you can essentially have all of these things piled up in such a mess that you can essentially break the game to a degree. Obviously, early on, your ability to break it is much less so. It's just more turning things in your favor a good bit. But they also have things that are, of course, dude, a lot about different ways of, getting benefits from dodging attacks or parrying them or whatever. I feel like at times I don't know that they're actually working in a way that I feel like it could communicate that better. There's a lot of communication in the UI that this game's not great at. So when I played it on Game Pass, I did not know there was that whole system of equipping the Pictos without the secondary equip kind of thing. I didn't do it at all. But when I was playing it again on PS5, it kind of clicked a bit more, and it's like, all right, I'm starting to get the hang of this whole thing. And then there's, you're upgrading your weapons, which are really interesting. That has like a Souls mechanic to it of they have affinities for certain stats, so you want to upgrade the certain stats tied to the weapon you have equipped to get more benefits out of it, as well as some other stuff that's going on. That's those weapons have elemental things to them, and so you often want to equip specific weapons because they will exploit weaknesses in an area. It feels like each area has an elemental weakness that applies to most of the enemies, at least for what I've played so far. But yeah, it really makes for a fun battle system that makes me not regret like using a guide to go back to areas and finding things I've missed, and doing extra fights, because it still makes it a fun system to exploit, especially because they don't level up the enemies to scale up the enemies to your current level. When you go back to some of those earlier areas, you're just wrecking enemies, and that's always. And the story's quite well done. Yeah, it's a very depressing game to start, and gets a bit better as you go. Where I'm at, and I'm sure it goes to some rough places later on, but I don't really have a ton else to add. The level design, I feel like it can also get rough at times because it can be really easy to miss areas that you can go to and all that, with the way it kind of shows things. But luckily, I'm using a guide, so I don't miss them for too long. But yeah, that's been fun, and yeah, pretty well done. So yeah, feel free to take over.
Yeah, the thing about Clair Obscur that I loved was the game basically gives you like the idea of like what's going to be going to happen really through that entire beginning sequence. You realize like the overall like mood of what this game is going to be. It's going to be little bits of wonder interspersed with extreme dreariness. And it will not let up from there. What really impressed me about Clair Obscur? Well, there were two things that impressed me about it. The one thing that I loved about it, is they took the lessons from like basically the last 20 to 30 years of JRPGs that have existed up to this point, and they essentially built on top of them and created something that is frankly just it feels new, even though it's made up of a bunch of stuff that isn't. Like anybody who has played this game knows that parrying is a huge part of this game, and that's not really anything new. In fact, the parrying thing is very reminiscent of the type of stuff you encounter in Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, right down to sort of like having to predict just when the thing hits you before you can parry it. what the game does good is it turns this parrying into an insane spectacle, because you're not just, deflecting like regular attacks. You're deflecting these insanely over the top super attacks that fill the entire screen and really tax your ability to like keep a rhythm, to pay attention to the attacks that are coming at you, because realize some of these attacks are extremely elaborate and they'll hit you like somewhere from like 10 to 12 times, um, especially later on in the game. The other thing I really loved, oh, and then of course there was also, the whole projectile thing where characters have like weak spots that you have to hit with a projectile attack that will weaken them or stun them or will take a huge chunk of life off of them, stuff like that. But the other thing I really, really loved about Clair Obscur was its story. Um, I've said before, if you want to make a game that will really get into my top tens, you have to write a story that's going to make me feel something. And holy shit, did Clair Obscura make me feel a lot of things. Um, the whole like second half of that game, where you realize like, I mean, and the way the game hints at it, because if you've been paying attention, you start to realize that there's something off about this world that you inhabit. There's a lot of stuff that you see that looks vaguely familiar to stuff that you see in the real world, but it looks like it's been basically destroyed. And you find out why. Because you're essentially playing characters in a literal fantasy world that was created by these kids, and are now like having to, essentially exist after one of their creators has passed on, and now they're trying to find ways to deal with the grief and all the stuff that's happened. And like they get the game ends by giving you this impossible choice that has one that neither one of them feels completely satisfying. They're very bittersweet, and that's kind of the point, because it's about learning to move on from the loss of a loved one, and trying to find out how do you move on from there. That's essentially the huge theme of this game, of grief, learning to move on, and you know acknowledging the pain and confronting it, instead of trying to bury yourself inside fantasy so that you don't have to confront it, and how that ultimately hurts you in the long run. Um, but really, I mean, there really was like no competition in this game. When this game came out in April, it basically dominated the gaming, uh, you know, discussion space pretty much the rest of the year. It's won a boatload of awards, and 100% deserves every one of them. But yeah, that's why it ended up being my number one.
Yeah. So Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is it's complicated for me. I have been looking forward to this game for a very long time, and it's not that I was disappointed. It's just that it just came out at a really rough time for me. Not to show like the entitled point for gaming journalists, but just for some inside baseball. When we have review codes, we normally get them a week to 2 weeks before they come out, and this is one that I really expected to come early. Not that we get a whole lot of them, but the the PR firm we get these from is one that we're really close to, and we've traditionally gotten things pretty quick from them, despite our small size, and it's been historical. With this one, I got like the day it came out, so I didn't really have time to jump into it. And then when I did, other things came out that I had to give more attention to. So as a result, I had to abandon this game like 3 times. But the fact that I actually found time and came back to beat it
shows how good this game actually is. And the one thing that I'll always give it credit for and never take it away from is the fact that its battle system is so good. Brandon was talking about parrying. Like, he's right. You'll learn that you don't necessarily need it, but no, you really need it, just because, like, your anxiety isn't gonna let you do anything else. And this is a turn-based battle system. It is wild to know that you can play a turn-based RPG without ever getting hit, and you're good enough. I don't know if anybody has ever like recorded themselves playing through the whole game doing that yet, but that is a crazy feat in its own right, and that's why it's gotten a whole lot of street cred from the Souls likes people and the people who play all sorts of punishing. But yeah, I do think, while it had a nice story, like there were definitely a few plot points that I didn't really agree with, or like, they didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and like that's kind of like one of my main problems with the game, aside from its community. Just going to the community in general, like, first of all, I have no qualms of it winning Game of the Year. It's deserving of it. The game is great, but I've seen so many people talk about like this game like it's the only game that exists. People have said that, oh, it's the game that really brought RPGs back, and turn-based RPGs are back. And I'm like, we've been eating since Persona, man. So where have you been?
Oh yeah.
Like, when Dragon Quest came out, like, I don't know how many people who have played Clair Obscur also played Dragon Quest, which is the real OG. Man, like, I'm all for like talking about a game for its greatness, but don't disrespect an entire genre just because, like, it's all anime and all of a sudden this one looks somewhat realistic. Like, if I was gonna go ahead and like flame Clair Obscur Expedition 33 for all of their characters being dirty, of course I would be torched by the internet. It is what it is there. But yeah, like, a lot of the plot points they definitely hit, but they didn't hit as hard as they could have, just because, like, I came back to them. Like, for example, the big one that happens in Act 2 that affects your protagonists. I'm not going to talk about what happened because there are still people that haven't gone through it, but that was definitely a huge thing. It wasn't that huge for me, just because I expected it and I knew who was on the cast. You aren't gonna cast Ben Starr and just have him not have him be the main character, right? Like, that's one thing to definitely take note. But yeah, my other issue with the game is the fact that there's no maps. And I know that they did this to really, increase the immersiveness of everything, but I don't know, it was just rough for me, and it kind of made getting from point A to point B harder. There were a few points in the game where I had to ask my brother, who beat it before me, where to go, because I had no idea where I was going, and I even increased the lighting to make sure that I was making sure that I was looking at everything. And there was this cave that I totally did not even see. And if there was a map, this wouldn't have been a problem. Like, I think maps are a good accessibility thing that could totally work, even though they're really small, and that's also something to take note of. But yeah, like everything else, the visuals fantastic, the music even better, the battle system even better. The game is definitely worth all of the hype it gets. I just am not a fan of, you know, making fun of something in order to, or bringing something down in order to bring something up. Because Clair Obscur Expedition 33 does not need that at all. And I know that there's all of a sudden some AI issues now. Luckily, they've never actually been seen in, like, in the game's public form. But yeah, I understand the reasons why some awards are being retracted. But at the end of the day, if you're having fun with the game and it's really enjoyable and it's great, there's no complaints. So yeah, really great game. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have, but there are probably circumstances that were only exclusive to me. But yeah.
Oof. All right.
Yeah. I think the way that people have been talking about this is like, it's the only RPG able to compete for Game of the Year, and it's like, we just had Metaphor last year.
Exactly. And Metaphor was not a kid's story either. So
yeah, it's like, no, it's a good game, and I would say like the worst thing about it winning every award is that it makes it seem like there's no other really good games this year. Just happened to be the one that captured a lot of people's interest for the time that people had. Because there's a lot of games that I think we all had issues just getting the time to really be able to push it higher on our lists. That kind of was a big issue, and the game came out early enough to kind of take advantage of.
I do want to make one point that, like, it's not a detriment to the game, but now that it's this, you know, award-winning monument, if you will, it's gonna get the attention, and it already has gotten the attention of like the public world, right? Gaming is already in a rough spot, especially with people struggling to find employment and whatnot. And all of a sudden, we find out that Expedition 33, a game that was made by less than 50 people, aside from places where it's been outsourced to, won Game of the Year and made this much money, and it's all just. I just hope this doesn't set up a precedent where all of a sudden, like, more layoffs happen just because of the whole mentality of, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a bunch of scraps, that kind of idea. Shout out to Mike Fertitta, who brought this up when he was like trying out for the staff. Like, I just hope it doesn't set up a bad precedent.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're gonna have to end it because we've been talking too much.
Seriously.
This is too long of a podcast. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Brandon and Tanner for joining us.
Always.
As well as everybody else that did lists for this year. And yeah, we made a lot of stuff for the Game of the Year thing here. So yeah, we'll be back next week with a more normal show. Talk about things we've been playing, news that has happened. Because I trimmed it down big time, knowing that we would talk a lot about this stuff. And yeah, we'll be back next week to essentially kick off 2026 and see what all is happening. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoy the show, feel free to let friends and family know they should check it out, and select strangers who also didn't have time to play everything they wanted to last year and need to find time for it this year before everything else comes out. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and hope you enjoy this show. And yeah, we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
Bye.
See ya.